Hello, hello. Um, let's see, camera overlay. The yeah, chat has already jumped into spicy politics. Um, it's been a rough couple of weeks here in America. Um, Obviously, if anyone's looked at the news, we know that abortion in America is about to be overturned, and there probably what will come with that after that are bans on contraceptives, which are already being talked about in the southern states. So it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough. Um, but I don't know if should probably start out talking about House of the Dragon. I mean, since it also dropped, if anybody the yeah, I know. It's like hello from our Argentina, spicy politics. Yes, yes. I know. I know. The My last time to Argentina was actually in 2001. I went in December of 2001 on vacation, and Argentina was in the middle of quite a revolution where all the banks were smashed and there were protests every night, and I couldn't get money, and they kept changing the exchange rate. Like it went from 1 to 1 to the U.S. dollar to about 5 to 1 when I left, and there was like 7 presidents over the course of 10 days. It was a crazy it was a crazy time. It was a crazy time. Um, but I'm so happy I went. Argentina was so interesting, even though everything was shut down, and it was, but it was still fantastic. Yeah, yeah. I don't know why. These it's an odd thing because so in school, asking, "Are we playing the drinking game?" every time Preston says rough. So in school, when you learn about language and in sort of I don't know, sociology courses or whatever, biopsychology courses, they talk about language being this infinite, language being so different from animal calls because you can rearrange language in infinite ways, and but really I've noticed since becoming a YouTuber and people hanging on my words is that, yeah, I really repeat myself a lot. So maybe we are just animals, like repeating animal calls over and over again, and that we don't really have an infinite um, uh, uh, moving around of stuff. Um, Preston, are you a spy? Uh, People ask me this all the time, and I'm not talking about just YouTube. People like the friends I grew up with are always saying these kinds of jokes too. Not in Washington D.C. because people in Washington D.C. I'm I'm a dime a dozen. Everybody's like me. you know, you bring up something interesting about your life. You're like, oh yeah, well, after college, like I went and I lived in China for a couple of years, and people are like, oh yeah, I lived in rural Bangladesh, and you're like, oh, well, you just trumped me. Okay, fine. Um, but other places, people are like, why do you have this sort of life? And you're like, well, you must be a spy. But spies, having known quite a few in my life now, uh, they're actually not very worldly. They know about one issue and they stick to that issue. It's not like you can go around the horn and be like, well, tell me about, oh, you know about Argentina? Now tell me about Iraq. Now tell me about China. They're going to know about one issue. They also don't talk about those issues. Um, spies are the most boring people to talk to. They're horrible. And the reason is because they don't want to talk about anything about their personal life because they don't want anyone to know anything about their personal life. So that's off the table. And then they don't want to talk about politics, and they don't want to talk about their job. So what are you left with? They talk about like sports and like a restaurant they went to, maybe. Sometimes like they might be really wary, and they're like they don't want you even knowing where they eat. So they want to talk about like TV shows if they even have the time to watch TV shows because they tend to be pretty busy. Or they talk about like the game. Oh, did you see that game? Oh man, they won by like 10 points. They are incredibly boring people to talk to. Like just nothing. Like you can't like the regular things that the rest of us talk about every day. our friends, scandal between our friends, politics, like that's just off the table. So there's just nothing. You want to talk about something. And if you're not into sports, like I'm not into sports anymore, like I used to be. But there's just nothing. Like, I mean, I guess if if they were into Ice and Fire, but do you think House of the Dragon is leading towards making the Greens the 100% bad guys? Trailer is very black oriented. The faction. That's an interesting question because when you read Fire and Blood, the Greens are definitely made into the good guys, and you sort of have to read between the lines. Obviously, if like you kind of understand the bias of the source and start analyzing the material objectively, you kind of immediately go, wait, why isn't Rhaenys and Rhaenyra like the rulers? Like this seems logical that they would be the rulers, and so why but so if you have a little bit of an analytical skills, like I think you naturally start seeing the blacks as the good guys, even though it's first presented that the Greens are the good guys. But the trailer did give just a massive amount of time to the blacks. Like it's very clear that Rhaenyra is the main character, and the second main character is Daemon Targaryen. And so will you naturally like see them as the protagonists? Like I think that's just the nature of like fiction, as we start seeing the main characters as the protagonists, thus the rise of the anti-hero. But at the same time, they did have that scene of Alicent Hightower like being Arya and trying to take down Rhaenyra. And so where it's clearly portraying her like the Night King. And Rhaenyra is just a stand-in for Daenerys, right? Like she's just Daenerys again. And Daenerys was eventually made into a villain by story's end. So I think it's probably going to be something like you start out feeling for the blacks, you start out feeling for Rhaenyra, and then over time Rhaenyra just gets more and more extreme and nuts and goes crazy at the end. There's a lot of stuff in Fire and Blood that make Rhaenyra look crazy near the end. And after kind of coming to the conclusion, the sources are biased, I kind of started dismissing all of the crazy stuff. I'm just like, well, that's just the Maester like putting that in. Like, why should I believe that Rhaenyra is crazy? Like, why should I believe that she got insanely jealous that Daemon Targaryen had sex with Nettles when like their marriage seemed to be one of convenience? The show might go earnest on that, so it might earnestly have like Rhaenyra going crazy and becoming a villain. So I think it might be something like that they're gonna start out as the heroes and then eventually become the villains in the same way that Daenerys was supposed to start out as the hero and eventually become the villains. That's the Westerosi spicy politics, Greens are rot. Yeah, probably. the I love you, Preston. Thank you for keeping my interest in A Song of Ice and Fire alive. I've been involved with the series since freshman year of high school in 2012. Yeah, it's been really, the whole experience has been kind of fun. Like obviously, I think all of us have kind of addictive personalities where we kind of like get to know one thing and then and become really, really invested in that one thing. And I think we would have, maybe all of us without a community would have gone on and just moved on to the next thing and become obsessed about something else. But like the channel and the community and everything has kind of like kept us going on this, and it's been very fun. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of weird to think that it's been like so long now, that it's been like a decade that we've been talking about this. So, are all Cowboys fans spies? Well, I mean, it depends if they talk about anything else. Do Cowboys fans talk about anything else? I don't know. It's true. Um, Nobody is 100% everything. That's George R. R. Martin's thing. That's true. That's true that no character in his story is 100% evil except for maybe Ramsay Snow. But um, I think maybe nobody's 100% good in his stories. A few people are 100% evil, but just a handful. But but yeah, George R. R. Martin definitely likes to have everybody be a mixed bag and explore the human heart and the human condition. Um, I recently, like, even though we spent a lot of time, like me and Carmine, like making fun of uh, George, like not writing the Winds of Winter and stuff, like I recently like went back just because I'm working on another little video, and I was going back and like reading about like Nightlfyers and Fever Dream and how those books came about, and I was like, huh, like back back in the late 70s, early 80s, like George R. R. Martin, like he was kind of a rock star. He was pretty awesome. He would just do things that were completely like, he was struggling, he didn't have any money, and he would still just do stuff that was like risky and crazy, and because he just didn't care. He's just like, this is the right thing. And he wrote some really interesting stories with really fascinating characters but I wish he'd keep writing because his writing was good. um I like the throne room. Looks Dragonstone-ish. Would be neat if we saw the Greens erasing what remains of Valyrian culture gone by a Game of Thrones time. I do wonder about, because obviously the room with the table looks completely different, and the Iron Throne looks different. And I just wonder if they're just doing just complete like set redesigns. There's a few things that are like obviously passing over. Like that's the same exact dagger that was used. So it's this implication that it's in the same universe. Like it's not. But at the same time, the fact that they've reimagined the throne and reimagined the Westeros table at Dragonstone makes one think that, oh, this is supposed to take place in the exact same universe, or the same scene of Dragonstone. Like it's the same castle. King's Landing is the same King's Landing, right? Like it's interesting to redesign one thing and not redesign another thing. I suppose they do that with Star Trek too. Like every generation of Star Trek redesigns the Klingons. And then they kind of make jokes about it, but the Klingons look like Next Generation Klingons look very different from movie Klingons. And I mean like original cast movie Klingons look very different from the original series Klingons, and looks very different from I think the new modern show Klingons. And yes, there's explanations that they kind of shoved in there, retconning and stuff, but at the same time, it was just like, at the time, it was just, no, we're going to redesign this and have this character look different. I mean, the Andorians look different as well from show to show and stuff like that. But so they've redesigned some things and not redesigned other things. Like, are they going to give an explanation, or is it just like a reimagining? I don't know. I hope it's just a reimagining. Viserys sure was rot, literally. I think Viserys' character is just supposed to be not thinking. I mean, as I read Fire and Blood, I'm just like, oh my god, this guy's just an idiot. He's just getting manipulated by everybody right and left. And the picture they put in Fire and Blood is him like drunk and jolly and stuff like that. But we'll see what they do with him in the show. Like, is he gonna actually have a brain? Will he know what's going on? He'll probably be like Robert, because Robert in the show, they made him smart, but not about the things that mattered, right? Like he was focused on things. He was very introspective. You know, he was thinking about his relationship with Cersei and things like that. And, but he wasn't focused. Like he didn't know that like he sat with Littlefinger and Varys on his council for years and didn't suspect them of being crooked, which is just idiocy, right? Just absolute idiocy. You know, and even in the books, they make him eventually come around, like on the moral question of killing Daenerys. So like he's smarter and more introspective, than people think. Like he's not just the big drunk, you know, jovial George R. R. Martin stereotype character of like, you know, fast friend, quick to anger but quick to forgive, a fast friend, a shoulder puncher. You know, like he was actually more than that. Like Robert, in book and show, and I actually think that show Robert was an improvement on book Robert. It's one of the few compliments I give to the show. Like I think they added his extra scenes, added so much to the character and how he was portrayed, as being this like, you know, sad guy with these regrets about, you know, his relationship with not just Lyanna but Cersei and things like that. I thought they did that quite well. But will they make Viserys like that? Will Viserys be as rich as Robert? You know, I hope so. I hope so. But I think they're trying to make him like Robert, like a drunk who doesn't really understand the Game of Thrones that's happening around him. I wonder if Farseer trilogy influenced. Let me look up the Farseer trilogy. The 95 to 97. To be honest, I think it's probably a little late for George R. R. Martin. Like George R. R. Martin has, when I think of the things that really influenced George R. R. Martin, it's the stuff he grew up on, and like Michael Moorcock, Conan comics, the X-Men, Lord of the Rings, obviously. Like when I think of those things, even Buck Rogers, all of those television serials, and then there's his contemporaries, like and the contemporaries that are famous, like Robert Jordan, but also the contemporaries that are not so famous, like Melinda Snodgrass and things like that, so the he's greatly influenced by those people, like the but like the later stuff, like that's popular in the fantasy community today, I don't know if he thinks about it too much. I think he kind of has his ideas. He crafted all of his ideas throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and he kind of is stealing from those ideas and piecing together his story, the stuff he's already come up with. But you know, I mean, I'd never say never. I mean, he is a big reader, but I don't know. He seems more influenced by the stuff he grew up on and the work of his friends. Preston, just want to say I loved your video since 2015. Thank you so much for keeping me entertained all these years. Thank you. That makes me feel nice. I'm psyched for House of the Dragon. You know, like I say, like I'm cautiously optimistic that the show's going to be okay, which is, I mean, a lot of people are like, that's not too much of a compliment. I was like, I don't know. Like the trailer looks really good. The acting looks really good. I think it'll be interesting. Will we have the same excitement because we don't know what's coming next, you know, because we know how this is all ending, right? You know, so I miss some of that. Like one of my favorite aspects of watching Westworld, it's probably my favorite aspect of watching Westworld, is theorizing about what's the next episode's going to be and thinking about where the characters are going to go and trying to guess. And there's going to be none of that for House of the Dragon. We know where everything's going, you know. we know Rhaenyra's dying. Sorry, guys. Spoilers. Um, let's see. I watched Dragon Demands today for the first time. Thoughts? Dragon's Demand. He really knows his stuff. He's a very nice guy. He's really into this. He's really into the stuff. He's more positive on everything than I am. So like he's got a rosier perspective on the world. He's more optimistic. He definitely thinks that the Winds of Winter will be finished, and he thinks that House of the Dragon is probably going to be a pretty good show because they got a really good writing staff. And so he's much sunnier than I am. So was Maynard Plumm skin changed by Bloodraven? No, I wouldn't say that he's skin changed. I think he was just in disguise. He was glamored, I think, is the prevailing fan theory on Maynard Plumm. I don't think skin changed. And just because one, like, we meet Bloodraven and he's not that powerful compared to Bran. Like, Bran can time travel and affects change throughout time. We know that Bloodraven cannot do that. So Bloodraven is not as is not as strong as Bran. Now, is he? And we know that Vermeer Six Skins is also really strong, and he can't skin change people. So he now that logically speaking, that doesn't mean that like Bloodraven couldn't be stronger than Vermeer Six Skins and skin change people, but based on everything else, it doesn't seem likely. The only person that we know that can skin change human beings is Bran, and so it's a big jump to say like Bloodraven can do it too, and he was doing it at the time of of that. So I just think glamoring is probably more on there. See, I can't just go and talk about people and not, they might be in the chat. People are going to be like, how do you feel about Carmine? And I'm like, that guy is a total fucking dick. That guy is the biggest dick in the world. Carmine's trying to get me to watch Halo. He sent me all of the show, and I haven't done it just because I've been busy. You and Carmine going to talk about Raised by Wolves 2. We actually did do a podcast on Raised by Wolves 2. I think maybe Carmine has that. I have to ask him about it. But we did talk about it. We did do a podcast on Raised by Wolves season 2. It was bonkers. He's like, what? I feel like what do you think High Hermitage as a what do you think of High Hermitage as a second Dane hold? Why complicate things? Why doesn't Darkstar just go to Starfall? I was I was doing some research on on the Dane family tree actually for the Hotah chapters, and I was trying to determine whether or not like how related Darkstar was to say Edric Dane, and I don't think there's anything. I think he says at one point that somebody's a cousin, but like we don't know if that means like literal cousin or like second cousin, third cousin, fourth cousin, or just like kin, right? And so we don't know like how long the cadet branch has existed. Is it a fairly recent thing? Is it like car hold? Like, how long has this thing existed, right? Because obviously, like, when we talk about the difference between the Karstarks and the Starks, there are massive, massive differences, right? Um, and there's no loyalty between the Karstarks and the Starks, and they're all Starks, right? But over time, like, we're gonna have these uh, uh, differences. So, like, what's the political difference between like a High Hermitage Dane and a Starfall Dane? Well, I have no clue. Like, so little's been written. Now, um, why do I think George R. R. Martin did it? Is George R. R. Martin was not prepared to talk about Starfall yet. You know, like he's created this big mystery box that I don't even think he knows what's inside of what Starfall is, and Ashara Dane, and what Ned was doing there, and why Ned is named Ned. And there's this it's going to be the most incredible surprise that's gonna completely like change Ice and Fire and how we think about it. And you know, oh God, if they all go to Starfall to find Darkstar, I'm gonna have to talk about that. Crap. Abort. Have it be High Hermitage. You know, I really think it's that he was like, Starfall was too special, and he wasn't prepared to talk about Starfall yet. And so he's just like, you know what? Let's make it High Hermitage instead. And I think that's the only reason he did it. Is that he just wasn't ready. He wasn't ready to work out like what Starfall is all about. So, I mean, that's why I complicate things. But I mean, you are right. Like, it all depends. Like, if he's only a first cousin, like, maybe he'd want support of the Danes, or the Starfall Danes. But if there's been like a couple hundred years, who knows? Let's see. Would Aurane Waters be an interesting POV? Oh, he'd be a fascinating POV. Trying to think, like, but at the same time, you're like, you know, with the ballooning Ice and Fire story, you know, which is to, like, accelerating like our universe like faster than the speed of light. Um, the Would you want to throw in more like building up like what the stepstones are like and what his pirate empire is like, or you just want to have him like killed off screen, or like, you know, like he's so much, there's so much, or you know, shoved into somebody else's chapter quickly and dealt with, like, um I think he would be fascinating to be a point of view. I mean, a lot of things are going to be fascinating points of view. Like, you know, I would love to hear about like why like what Astapor is, what's happening in Astapor right now. But, you know, how much time do we have? And so I think that's a big part of it. Oh gosh, like, and I don't know what other characters would be with him. You'd have to invent all sorts of new characters, and then you're like, oh gosh, we're making even more characters. So let's see. Somebody's like, Michael Moorcock. Yes, Moorcock. I mean, this is the big question, is just why would expect safety from Starfall? Well, only if, you know, he was on really good terms with him, and and they had an army. Like, an example being, okay, say John, you know the retcon in Storm of Swords where John explains that he was actually going to be given um, a castle in the gift to rule as a lord, even though that goes completely against his motivation for joining the Night's Watch, you know. And it's like, I try to make a theory like explaining that, but it's probably just a really bad retcon. Um, I mean, if High Hermitage is just some random keep given to, you know, a Dane, and he doesn't really have much force, you know, and he's still just like a cousin, like has a pretty close relationship with the Danes of Starfall. It would make more sense to him to run. Like, imagine if like Jon Snow got into trouble and Ned was still alive, like, or Robb was still alive. Would he like go to Winterfell rather than trying to defend Tumbletown Tower or Queen's Crown Tower? So we don't know. It's all about the relationship. It's all, yeah. George R. R. Martin is the greatest borrower of all time. It's true. I mean, he borrows a lot. He borrows a lot from himself. But yeah, he borrows a lot from other people. But like the stuff that's his is like the genetic telekinesis stuff, and his writing style I think is fairly unique. But like um, a lot of the setting, like once I read Wheel of Time, I'm like, oh, how he describes like the world and the fantasy setting, like that's all quite established, or even, I mean, from Dune, I mean, the whole Bene Gesserit kind of idea is, and the houses of Dune is completely um, borrowed. Um, I don't understand why you Americans fight so much over politics. You have two right-wing parties with basically the same platform and slightly different narratives. I mean, I don't want to get into spicy politics this quick, but I do not believe in any respect that our two parties are right-wing. And if you believe like the two American parties are the same, like you're just not paying attention. There's a big difference between a party that, like, one of our parties doesn't believe in democracy. One of our parties doesn't believe in privacy. Like, one of our parties wants to ban abortion and make religious law in America. Like, that's just there. And then the other party, with all of their faults, and there's a lot of them, oh, they don't do enough. Oh, they're a little too, into capitalism. They're too into free trade, or whatever people criticize them for. They at least still believe in democracy. Like, they still believe in women's rights. They still believe in right to privacy. They still believe in separation of church and state. Those are huge, huge, huge issues, right? Like, you can say like, oh, like, even if I took, like, let's bring it back to Ice and Fire. Like, we can say like, oh, like Joffrey and Ramsay are the same character. No, like, even if you're going to say both American parties are bad, I don't. Like, I'm straight up Democrat. Like, Democrats are fantastic. Like, they represent my interests. I like the Democrats. I want to put as many Democrats in power as possible. I like them. Now, but say you didn't like the Democrats, and you were like, oh, they both suck. There's a huge difference between Joffrey and Ramsay. There's enormous differences between Joffrey and Ramsay. Like, Joffrey, bad guy. Ramsay, oh my God. Okay? Like, who would you want running the Seven Kingdoms? A Joffrey or a Ramsay? Like, you'd want a Joffrey, because a Joffrey is way better than Ramsay. And so there's just no comparison. There's just no comparison when you say, like, even if you say bad and worse, like, there's a difference between bad and worse. There's a difference between broccoli and rat poison. There's a difference between like eating a turd and rat poison. Like, like, I would rather eat a turd than eat rat poison. Like, they're just not the same. Like, it's just so, there's such stark differences as an American to look at this. Now, if you're some even, like, I don't even, like, it's just ignoring all social issues, because they're completely different on social issues, and they're rather different on economic issues. It's just, you kind of have to know economics a little bit to understand their differences. But no, they're very, very different parties. Now, are they conservative compared to Europe? Yeah, they're both conservative compared to Europe, but there's one that, like, one does not believe in democracy. Like, one does not believe in separation of church and state. One does not believe in the right of privacy. One does not believe in, like, women's rights, like reproductive rights. Like, and the other does. The other believes in democracy. Like, it's so, like, it's hard not to get angry, to be able to be like, how are you seeing these two things the same? It's like, have you read Accursed Kings? I have not. George R. R. Martin says it's his biggest inspiration on Ice and Fire. It's not that things aren't clearly his inspiration, but George R. R. Martin often often says that uh often lies and says that like he came up with something all on his own when like it's completely borrowed, you know, like I bring this up a bit because people are like there was some discussion years back. I remember in Reddit when people are talking about like when did George R. R. Martin come up with the idea for the Blackfires, and they're like, oh, we had this like Blackfire revelation like on this and this date. I'm like, Blackfire revelation? What are you talking about? The minute you come up with Bloodraven, the minute you steal Bloodraven from Michael Moorcock, like it comes with the Blackfires. Like so this is we're talking about Elric. Like Michael Moorcock wrote a series of stories about this guy named Elric, who was this albino, white-haired dude with a sword called Stormbringer, and they lived on this like island where their royal family like participated in incest for like generations. Like it's like comically the Targaryens. Like it's just comically the Targaryens, right? And the guy is caught like so clearly Bloodraven, right? The guy like, and then but he has like an opposite. He has a Bittersteel, who's like, and they fight over their cousin because they're both in love with their cousin. You know, they have a Shira Sea-Star. Like it's the same exact story. So for like people to be like, oh, when George R. R. Martin like came up with this idea for Blackfires, I'm like, you didn't fucking come up with anything. What are you talking about? Like it's 100% lifted, 100% lifted. But he'll talk about like, when I came up with this idea, like, okay. Oh, Accursed Kings is old. Yeah, no, this is then I fully believe it. Oh. Um the original Game of Thrones. I've never actually read this, but oh, I see. It actually is about the 100 Years War and probably the um that royalty. Yeah, that makes sense then. It makes a lot of sense. The Iron King. Well, there you go. Um because obviously like Lannisters and Starks are based on, you know, the War of the Roses and things like this, and it probably gave him a lot of historical background on that. He probably didn't know the historical background on that until he read that. But I should probably like read it sometime. Okay, all right. I fell behind, so I'm gonna pass by um, a bunch. I'm skimming these really quickly. Are you saying I would be fine with Joe Manchin or Sinema being president? I'd be fine with them over a Republican. Like, given me the choice of a Republican or them, I would absolutely choose them. Absolutely, 100% in a heartbeat. If those are my choices, if someone said any Republican or these guys, oh yeah, absolutely. Because right now we're talking about like the real importance of like never electing another Republican again, so that they can never get another Supreme Court justice. Um, it's so, and Joe Manchin or Sinema, like as much of a pain in the butt as they are, they would still choose a liberal for the Supreme Court and things like that. So I would definitely like, yeah, no, I mean, like I'm still happy that they exist as Democrats. As much of a pain in the butt as they are, it's better than them being Republicans. Like it's better than a Republican. Like there's so many things that can be worse. Like, you know, it's like, oh, would you be happy like owning would you be happy with like a badger being loose in your house? And I'm like, well, I mean that sucks, but it's worse. It would be worse to have like a leopard like loose in my house, because that's gonna fucking kill me, you know. So in Accursed Kings, there's a baby swap of King John with a bastard. Grows up thinking he's a bastard, ends up in jail when he makes his claim. Oh, that's probably interesting. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's probably. Um, George R. Martin claimed to be a huge gamer back in the 90s. What video games do you think he was into? My money, A Link to the Past. Huh. The yeah, I didn't know he was I mean, I think when he says he's a huge was he I mean, was he a huge gamer in the sense that he was into D&D, but I didn't know he was into computer games. Um or computer. I have no idea what computer games you'd be into, but um let's see. In Taiwan, do you personally speak Mandarin or Hokkien? Well, I mean, I'm in Taipei, so everybody here speaks Mandarin, and I studied Mandarin. But it's funny. I chuckle because you said Mandarin or Hokkien. Like the second most spoken language is Taiwanese or um, Minnan Hua, which so for those that don't know, like Taiwan, so the native people of Taiwan are kind of like Pacific Islanders. So they're completely different people, but there's not many of them left, but they have their pockets here. But the Aboriginal Taiwanese, and if you watch like Moana, and which is the Disney story about like the expansion of Pacific Islander culture, and then its pause, and then its resumption, which is something that really happened. So like, good on Moana for actually like touching on something kind of historically cool. Pacific Islander culture actually originates in Taiwan. Like that's the earliest Pacific Islander culture you can find. Um, and so after at around 1600, immigrants from Fujian province started coming over, and so you have Fujianese who speak Minnan and then you have these people called the Hakka, which the Hakka for the most part have been called the Jews, the Chinese Jews. Like there are these people that originally came from the north, but everybody hated them. So or the sometimes they're called the Chinese Gypsies. They originally came from the north of China, and everybody hated them, so they got kicked out, and they eventually migrated, and then they were hated and hated and hated, and they eventually kind of settled down to Fujian, and many went down into Malaysia, where you can find a lot of Hakka community. And so when the Fujianese came over, a lot of Hakka came too. So most people on the island are from that 1600 immigration. So you've got the Fujianese who speak Minnan and then you've got the Hokkien who speak Hakka. And then, in 1949, you had the Guomindang, which they lost the civil war in China and then took up shop here, and they took over the government. So they made the official language Mandarin. And so it's funny though, because I asked, but the fact that there's a Hokkien minority in Taiwan is important because the vast majority of people are Fujianese and they speak Minnan. And so one could say, like, why isn't Minnan the national language of the country, and will it ever become the national language of the country? And the answer is no, because the Hokkien exist, and the Hokkien don't speak Minnan, and they would be against that. And so it's it's probably always going to be English and Mandarin or something, and never Taiwanese, as they say. It's funny because when you say Taiwanese, you mean Minnan, and it kind of is overshadowed the fact that the Aboriginal Taiwanese have their own languages. But when you say Taiwanese, you don't mean the Aboriginals, you mean the Fujianese that came over in 1600. But these answer questions on the Chinese language. Yeah, I know. There's anybody. I doubt anybody's. Many people are studying it. No simplified at all in Taiwan. Good Lord, that would be a tough transition. The only simplified character that you see in Taiwan is Tai, which is the Tai of Taiwan is simplified, but that's the only one. That's but yeah, I've studied both simplified and traditional, so I can read both. But it's not so tough for reading. Like you eventually figure it out. like the writing is just writing traditional is just so fucking hard. Like it's just like, oh my god, like why have you put in these tiny little things when there's no need to, like, just stop. Like, so I mean, the funny thing about Taiwan is that they even if mainland China comes up with a good idea, the Taiwanese will do the exact opposite for the sake of doing the exact opposite. So let's be honest, like simplified characters is probably a good idea, but the Taiwanese are like, no, never. And for many years, the mainland China has a romanization system called pinyin, which is pretty good. And the Taiwanese refused to use it, and so they teach little children something called Bapa Mofo, and they used Wade Giles romanization, which is horrible. It this is like all very out of a lot of people's like knowledge set, but if you have, many of you maybe have had a beer called Qingdao beer, which is a pretty good beer, and it's a pretty good beer because the Germans ended up building a beer factory in Qingdao, China, and so most people, they look at the bottle, and on the bottle is Tsingtao, and so they go, oh, Tsingtao beer, and you're like, no, well, it's actually Qingdao beer. It should be spelled Qingdao, but you know, it's Tsingtao is in Wade Giles, and Wade Giles was because it's all about how when Wade Giles was created, the rulers of China were Manchurian and spoke Manchurian, and so there was a romanization of the Manchurian language, and then like various words were translated for that. So like Peking became Beijing because of the Manchurian language, and we associate all these things together, and it's just ridiculous. Who is the better man, Dr. MLK or Stalin? I mean, is this a joke? I mean, of course MLK is the better person. Like, Stalin was a fucking maniac. What are you talking about? like, is this a difficult question? Like, who put people in gulags and like executed people? Like, Stalin was a freaking monster. What are you? I mean, what's the worst you could say about MLK? But he cheated on his wife? Like, oh boy. No, MLK is pretty awesome. Malcolm X versus Malcolm X is a much better person than Stalin. What are you talking about? Much better person. Malcolm X has an interesting life though, because if you read Malcolm X's writings, pre and post Mecca, they change very much. He actually, like, after going to Mecca, Malcolm X completely and utterly relinquishes, like, stops his talk about racism. Like, he decides that like any like hard feelings he had towards white people or anything was all wrong, and that the entire, like, and that, you know, we're all God's children, every different race and things like this. Like, he completely switched in that respect. However, on the other hand, he was actually like kind of a feminist before going to Mecca, and then came back from Mecca like being like, no, women need to cover up and like be subservient to men. So like, you know, so he kind of, Mecca changed him. Mecca changed him, but you know, he was a complicated guy. MLK was very milquetoast in terms of rhetoric. A lot of his stuff, because we naturally like accept it today. I think at the time what he was saying was quite shocking. I think there are some things that MLK said that today they kind of push aside because they're a little. I wouldn't even say like, it's not like they're so you've never heard them. But for instance, MLK fundamentally believed that that white people and black people like will never really be equal until there's some sort of income redistribution. Like he fully believed that too. And like talk today about reparations or like income redistribution like is just um rich people will fucking murder you if you say like, oh, maybe you should have your wealth redistributed. And so I think people don't like to talk about that aspect of MLK, and they kind of focus on my dream is that people won't be discriminated against on the color of their skin, and injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Like they focus on those ones because those are like some good talking points. But he did have some rather extreme, for America, rather extreme ideas about economics and wealth distribution that people don't talk about. But he wasn't so milquetoast as people think. Compared to Malcolm X, yes, of course. But um, let's see, Nihon, Japan. Funny how um, language can twist through translations. Yeah, I'm trying to think where did the term Japan come from? That's an interesting, the etymology of that. Um, oh, it comes from Portuguese. Um, oh, and then a Portuguese. It comes from a Portuguese interpretation of Chinese, of a Chinese reference to it. Because, well, in Chinese, Japan is urban, which means sun root, which is what the Japanese call themselves as well. Like the the origin of the sun, like the land of the rising sun. Um, and so it comes from a Chinese Japon, which urban, yeah, it just goes all over the place. Like how, like which Chinese language are we talking about, and then which romanization system did it go through Wade Giles and like Manchurian to get to that? It's yeah, it's really yeah. Um, I don't know any of these streamers either. PJ got an older audience, probably. When I see other streamers, even the ones that are older, like they're constantly using slang that like gets me. I'm just like, wait, what does that mean? Like, um, why use the ROC flag instead of the Taiwanese green flag? Well, the Taiwanese green flag hasn't been like officially um, uh, designated as their national flag. It's just, so the ROC flag is just the one they have. I mean, that's the one that's flown here everywhere. Like the Taiwanese green flag like isn't flown anywhere. You don't see it anywhere. So that's just the way it is. Now people obviously like, it's a little weird, the Taiwanese, I mean, ROC flag, because so the Taiwanese flag is, a red field with a blue field with a white sun in it, which is the son of the Kuomintang, which is the nationalist party. Um, and so for most of Taiwan's existence, there was only the nationalist party, and so it was quite logical to have a sun in the corner. But then, with the reforms that came in the 80s and 90s, and the birth of democracy and things like this, you had the rise of other political parties, mainly the Democratic Progressive Party, which is the current president is a Democratic Progressive Party member. And so it's really weird to have like it is really weird to have a flag that has the symbol of the opposition party like on it. Like imagine like in America, like Biden being president and having like an elephant in the in the field of the American flag. Like it'd be kind of odd. Um, but that's just the way things go. By the way, the party colors in Taiwan are green and blue. So if Democratic Progressive Party is the Green Party, and the Republic of, I mean the Kuomintang Party is the is the blue party because no one wants to be the red party in Taiwan. You know? Let's see. Oh, more interesting question: Stalin or Pol Pot? So this has to do with like opportunity, right? Like Pol Pot. If Pol Pot had the power that Stalin had, yeah, it would have been worse. Like Pol Pot was probably a worse human being. Um, but he had a smaller population of people to deal with. But he would have Pol Pot would just never had the opportunity to kill that many people because Cambodia was small. But like well Russia is huge, but Pol Pot would have. I mean Pol Pot like God, he systematically like went through systematically had people go through files and like execute people like just one by one, like and just huge percentage of the population. Like it's just like I think that's 25% of the population, like just insane numbers. Like so Pol Pot's a bad person with intention, but his result only because he didn't have the opportunity. Like so but I don't know. I mean, the why they always focus on, of course, it's they always focus on these random communists. There's plenty of other horrible people out there too that have killed people with different political ideologies. How's the Areo chapter going? Areo chapter is nearly done. It should be posted on. I just have to record it, but it came out fucking great. It fucking came out great. Like it's funny though. It's longer than I would have liked. I think it came out 6,800 words. And keep in mind, Daenerys was 4,900 words. And so Daenerys was shorter than I would have liked. And in reading it, because a lot happens and it's the pace is very fast. Daenerys reads more like it's a Game of Thrones, like chapter. While the Princess Justice, like Hotah comes out, like it's definitely has the feel of a Dance with Dragons chapter. But I'm really like I was reading it last night, like going over it last night. I was just like I was just like, wow, this is pretty. Like I really like a lot of the characters. Like I'm just like, oh gosh, like this came out really great. So I'm happy. I'm very happy with it. Income redistribution and reparations are stupid. I don't know about that. So in economics, there's no method to redistribute wealth to others. Like wealth naturally like rises up when you're talking about, say, a factory, right? And like the factory worker and gets a certain amount of salary, and the amount of like wealth that he is going to accumulate on that salary is very small. Well, and if the factory, gets profits, those profits tend to go to the people on the top. And so over time, the rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get poorer. And that's just the way economics works. There's no natural method for redistribution. However, this is dangerous because if people just keep getting richer and richer and richer and the poor stay poor, they get angry and they eventually overthrow and they slit everybody's throat and they burn everything down. So you can't have that system. So if you have no income redistribution, like you're done for. Like you're done for as a system. This is like saying let's be even like let's like look at like baseball or football, right? Like in all of those systems, like the reason football continues and is like fun to watch is because you have profit sharings and like the last place team gets first choice in the draft pick, all these sorts of things to help make the whole system competitive. Because if you didn't, then you just have one rich team that just wins every year and it would just be stupid, right? and like people would stop watching, right? So it's the same kind of idea, is that if the system isn't fair, if a system isn't fair, people aren't going to participate. If you're not invested in a system, you're not going to participate. And this is a big deal because we're talking about, there's something called the Gini coefficient, which is a measurement of wealth and income disparity in the country, and it's highly correlated with the stability of that nation. So the higher the Gini coefficient, the more crime you have, the more attempts on the government, coups, overthrows, unrest, splinter movements. It's very, very highly correlated. People know this for years. Okay, so in all industrialized countries, you have at minimum a progressive tax structure where the rich pay more in taxes. Those taxes are used for social programs, and then you have stability. People have the opportunity to rise up. It's a more fair game, a game that people are invested in. It's called being invested in society. In fact, the highest correlation to whether or not a society is stable is the presence of a social security system, a retirement system. Because if the government is going to give you money and provide for you in your golden years, you are very invested in that system remaining in place. So no, it's like income redistribution and is really fucking smart. The reverse is death. Like, you will die, like, if you don't have income redistribution. Like, people will kill you. Like, it's just, it's like having a basketball game and just being like, you know what, that side, they're going to start with 50 points, and the losers are going to have to have the winners shit on their faces. Like, how do you think the other side would react? What do you think would happen in that situation? You bring all the kids into the gym and you're like, team A, you get 50 points, and team B, if you lose, everybody gets to shit on your face. What do you think would happen? Do you think there would be violence? Yeah, I think there'd be violence. Like, no one's going to let like somebody else shit on their face for a system that's like completely like not fair. So I'm sorry, Connor, like, you're 100% wrong. Like, it's in your best interest. It's in your best interest to have income redistribution. Now, reparations are a different thing. I am open to reparations. I would like to see a good system on how it's done, but I'm talking about, like, we paid for we got a bunch of labor in America, and those people were never paid. And I think that's kind of unjust. Now, how you deal with that? Because other people are like, well, there's statutes of limitation and things like that. But but seriously, like, there was work. People got it for free, and was never paid for, and we have big effects. So I'm open to hearing about what plans are there. What's my opinion on George R. R. Martin's Fever Dream? George R. R. Martin's Fever Dream is a really great book. It's and so in thinking about Corlys Velaryon and race and Ice and Fire, I started thinking about Nightlfyers and Fever Dream because George R. R. Martin does not write that much about race. He doesn't. It's a down the list interest for him. Sex and gender are way high. Like, he thinks about those issues a lot more, but it's not like he never thinks about race. Nightlfyers and Fever Dream are probably the two things that both speak to what it was about. What he feels. Fever Dream it's a really interesting book. It's the best part of Fever Dream. So Fever Dream alternates between two points of view. You've got Abner Marsh, who is this George R. R. Martin stand-in that looks like George R. R. Martin and acts like George R. R. Martin and has a steamboat that goes up and down the Mississippi River. And then the other character is Sour Billy, who is this poor white trash racist guy from the South, and who's been following around a vampire and wants to become a vampire. and like getting in Sour Billy's head and the darkness of where Sour Billy goes, and like is really, really great writing. Like it's the Sour Billy chapters of George R. R. Martin are some of his best work. Altogether, the story, I think it kind of ends on a weekly, but like I still think it's and it kind of meanders, Fever Dream. Like it doesn't need to be as long as it is, and the story doesn't really go anywhere. But the setting and the political messages that George R. R. Martin says during it are really interesting. And it gets into Nightlfyers, and it gets into like why I think Corlys Velaryon being black is actually kind of an interesting thing. I don't think the writers were thinking about it at all. Like they were just picking somebody because they're like, well, we need more diversity in the cast because more diversity means more viewers. Like I accept that, but Corlys Velaryon being black, I think actually makes the story a lot better. But I think they just stumbled into that. I think they completely stumbled into it. But I think it actually plays into like what how George R. R. Martin feels about race with regards to Nightlfyers and Fever Dream. But it's definitely a good read. It's a good read. It's worth a read. So yeah, I mean, I recommend that you read it, but it's let's see. Oh, we're still talking about Pol Pot. Will you do the inverse of George R. R. Martin for the fan fiction? Finish the main story and then tackle the expanded universe. I mean, at this point, we're talking like a huge undertaking to get to, because we've got to get to like 60 chapters at least, right? And we've done 2. So let's start with trying to get into the Winds of Winter getting done before we're talking about like what goes after that, so we'll see about the but yeah, I don't think we'll worry about the expanded universe. Let's get back to Connor here. My children and my family would get my money no matter how much or how little of it I have to pass on. That's why I work, provide for myself and family or the future. And like I say, like as I explained, like your family will be killed if you do not like lend a helping hand. Like it's in your best interest to lend a helping hand for a stable society. You will die. Your family will die. If, again, like getting back to the basketball game, you set up a basketball game in which you say, hey, my son gets 50 points and whoever loses, he gets to shit on your face. Okay, bye. And then you close the door. Okay. You're letting your son get fucking murdered by these people because you set up a system where he's supposed to shit on their faces, right? You're doing him a disservice by like setting up a bad system that's going to lead to violence. Like that, like I don't understand like how people don't see this. Like, I mean, some people just think, oh no, society's just gonna be fine. Who cares about everybody else? Society's gonna be fine. I'm gonna get mine, and this is kind of the Trumpian idea. Like, I don't care how much I screw stuff up as long as I like extract some profits. Let the system burn. It's a feast for crows, right? I mean, that's your attitude here. Like that. Oh, screw it. It's a feast for crows. Like I'm gonna feast on crows. Fuck it. Everybody else dies. Or do you think about like a stable society and like your children and how they're going to exist in a world? Like if the only thing you care about is like your wealth and your children's wealth, like, I mean, if you think about that, like you're good and you only focus on your children's wealth, your children are going to die. Is politics inherently violent? Yeah, of course. Of course politics is inherently violent. I mean, politics, huge aspect of politics is property, right? And property exists and is owned because of the threat of violence. Whether your violence against somebody else back in caveman days, I am Ugg. This is my kill. This is my wife. This is my woman. I will beat you. Or threat of violence from the state. Like, no one can come in and take your stuff, or else the state will commit violence, right? So, yeah, of course it's about violence. Property is about violence. Ownership is about violence. You cannot own something without the threat of violence. There's no, if you can come up with another way to own something without the threat of violence, please tell me. But yes, of course, politics is inherently violent. Yes. Liberals claim to be on the side of the poor, but claim that those life in trailer parks are his moral inferior. When did I claim that? I mean, people in trailer parks get all this stuff too. Like, what are you talking about? They get social programs too. Like, what do you? I don't understand. Like, what's this all about? Are you specifically talking about reparations? Because this gets into the complexity of reparations. Because like, most people in America did come to America after slavery was already ended. So the question about that free labor is like, if you're German descent, which most people in America are from German descent, you came to America after, slavery. So you can be like, wasn't my fault. Wasn't my fault. I mean, segregation might have been my fault, but certainly not slavery, so, I mean, that's why I'm saying, like, reparations are like an interesting question. I would like to hear about. I'm open to the idea of like how we're going to pay this debt, but is it a debt as simple as white people pay black people? I don't know. I'd like to hear ideas, because it seems like it'd be really, really hard to implement. So right now, we got social programs. I don't understand this, like, life in like, when did I ever say that living in a trailer park was morally inferior? Like, who the fuck what the fuck is that? Where does that fucking come from? Jesus Christ, man. Yes, women can be sexist against women too. Oh yeah. I mean, fucking look at the Supreme Court. Jesus Christ. I mean, she wants to sell up Gilead, right? Well, she is setting up Gilead. It's not even a want, right? It's happening, right? Gilead's happening. So it's pretty sad. Pretty sad. I wonder if Abner Marsh is a shout out to the Marsh family of Lovecraft's Shadow over Innsmouth, or the real life Othiel Charles Marsh, for that matter. If it were a shout out, I would guess Lovecraft. I mean, he loves Lovecraft. But I'm gonna have to see. So he wrote most of Fever Dream. Is inspired by his time in Dubuque, Iowa. So, maybe if there was some sort of marsh related to his time in Iowa that you could find. But I mean, obviously, like, Bowen Marsh is going to be named after Abner Marsh and stuff like that. Carmine says, I knew this Hitler guy who loved Italians, not knowing Italians hated Hitler. Well, it's kind of true. Italians had some complicated views. So Jackie makes a very good point, and this actually comes back to Fever Dream. It's both. Men have pushed sexist ideas on women for thousands of years. It eventually becomes externalized, and women start pushing sexist ideals on other women. This is the fucking George R. R. Martin point of Fever Dream and Sour Billy. He is Sour Billy is this character who has nothing. He's poor. He is the trailer trash, right? And but he aspires to be a supremacist vampire. So the vampires in the story are broken into two factions. One group are supremacists and believe that like vampires should rule the world, and the other group believes that vampires and humans should live equally in coexistence, right? And not so subtle fucking stand-in for race relations, especially considering that the story takes place like just before the Civil War, like, and they talk about slavery constantly, right? So Sour Billy is this poor white racist who just hates black people. He hates black people, and he really, really wants to be a vampire. And so he's following around and doing everything that the racist vampires want, because he thinks that they will reward him by making him a vampire. And so like he is just a traitor to humanity, for this reason. And so it's the same. And it gets into also just like the mental trauma and anguish of poverty and his dreams and aspirations of rising out of poverty manifest in a way that's racist. Like the only way he can deal with his poverty and feeling inferior in society because of his poverty is to feel superior to black people and to dream of being a rich racist vampire. Now, the joke of the story is that vampires work differently in Fever Dream, and you can't become a vampire. Okay, vampires, it's completely birth. There's no changing people into vampires in this universe. He can never become that, right? And so it's this thing about like the poor white trash in America, like aspires to be like Trump, right? They're never going to be like Trump, but they allow like, oh, let's cut taxes on the rich because maybe I can be like Trump. You're never going to be Trump. Sour Billy's never going to be a vampire, but that's their feelings. And it's the same with like women who hate themselves, which, there's a lot, like, like they're never going to be, they think that they're going to be respected like men if they take up these male talking points. They're never going to be respected like men using those talking points. Like they're in these circles, these religious sexist circles, in these Republican circles, women are never going to be respected. But they think they're going to be respected if they only turn in and betray like their fellow women. It's the exact same thing. Like like why do people do what's the matter with Kansas kind of thing? Like why do people do things against their own self-interest? Like Sour Billy just does the most revolting things against his own best interest on this like pipe dream that he's going to become a vampire. Why do these women like sell each other out, for this pipe dream that they're going to be respected by men in their communities? They're not, like it's just these Amy Comey Barretts like of the world, like they're never going to be respected. No one respects her. No one respects her in her community. No one respects her outside in the liberal community. She thinks she's going to get respect. She's never going to get respect. Why, hello. How are you?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I've always explained this to my roommate, and she doesn't get like what's wrong with Kansas. She doesn't get it. I made the comparison, like in my country of Brazil, Bolsonaro won a good chunk of the black vote, despite the fact that he's so fucking racist. People are stupid. People are stupid, and they always vote against themselves.
Yeah, on this like aspiring dream, but like, oh, one day. You know what? Now I'm glad Fever Dream has been brought up, because now, when I first time I read Fever Dream, I was like, yeah, this is okay. And then I didn't. It was only like my second read. I was like, okay, this is really fucking genius, actually. So no, now I'm coming around to the end of this discussion to be like, oh god, the Sour Billy chapters are so good that it makes up for any other fault in the book. But yeah, it's people have this idea that they're going to be respected if they're traitors, I mean, this also gets into like Uncle Tom's, right? Like the whole Uncle Tom aspect, and like You know, um, why do people act like that? Well, they think that they're going to be. They think they can rise up and become one of this other class. And why I think like it's interesting that Corlys Velaryon is black. Like he wants to become a Targaryen. He wants his children to be a Targaryen, and he can never become a Targaryen. You know, so it's I think it's really fascinating that, but like I said, I think the writers just stumbled into that. Yeah. So how are you doing, Carmine?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I really do think that HBO is trying to push the diversity thing, which is
Oh,
I'm
of
fine
course.
with.
No, no,
I'm
no,
fine
no.
with.
It's as simple as look, like if we put a black person in, black people are going to watch, and that's more viewers. Like that's the
Which is
only thing.
better than the alternative. I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember this. I think this happened before you started your channel,
Hmm.
but maybe the audience might remember it. HBO did a rap thing with Game of Thrones. Do you remember this?
Oh no,
You
no,
don't
I didn't.
remember
No.
this? Yo, this was a whole thing they did to I guess try to bring in the quote unquote urban viewers, which is weird. So they thought rap music, because if there's anything that goes together, it's Game of Thrones and
Oh
rap, of
no.
course. And it was so bad. Like, who was this for? Who is this for? I don't. Woke, woke.
um. Here by the way, on this issue, so George R. R. Martin when he wrote Nightlfyers, quickly, I'll find this and talk about Aurane epilogue, I guess, in a second. Sometimes I miss super chats and I got, but so when speaking of like diversity and like what people think sells and stuff. So back to Nightlfyers, which is a fascinating story. So Nightlfyers, George R. R. Martin wrote in 1979 and published in 1980. And keep in mind, back then it wasn't chic or hip to include diversity in anything. All right, you're getting no brownie points. The only show on television that had portrayed a gay person positively was the show Soap, which had Billy Crystal on it, and that was like the first positive portrayal of a gay person on TV, like in a regular role, not just like a one-shot episode of like All in the Family. So George R. R. Martin makes the protagonist of Nightlfyers a bisexual black woman. And the story is like there is a thematic element to the story about it being about race. Like the main characters are like this. She's a genetic supremacist from a supremacist planet, and she's black. Like she believes she's genetically superior to everybody else, and she's black. And so George R. R. Martin's making certain like statements, and here the other protagonist of the story is Royd, this completely pale, white, crippled man who's been abused his entire life and exploited his entire life. And these two characters meet and like have to deal with a problem and things like this. So it's a big aspect of the story is the fact that Melantha Jurl is black and Royd Eris is white. And she's like this genetic supremacist and goes on this like change over the course of the story. And needs to help Royd and things like this. So when they finally published the book he published it as a short story. And then later George R. R. Martin needed money. And so they're like, oh, maybe we can publish some of your short stories. And keep in mind, he's like super struggling at this point, right? Like if he doesn't get some money, he's got to foreclose on his house and stop being a writer and all sorts of stuff, right? In fact, he kind of quit novel writing for years and goes to Hollywood. So they come to him, Melantha Jurl, bisexual black woman, and oh shit, I need to find. I got to do a screen grab because of it's the wrong image. Here we go. There we go. There's the cover of Nightlfyers. I got cut Nightlfyers cut off because I was just doing a screen grab. But that's the cover they gave. And so George he says to his publisher, like, yeah, so Melantha Jurl is black, right? And his publisher says to him, well, do you want to sell books or not? And if we put a black girl on the cover, it's not going to sell. And George, because he was in financial dire straits at the time, was like, okay, I'm gonna. He caved, and he was like, fine, publish that as the cover. This random white chick in a story about a black woman where it's fairly significant that she's black. And the movie rights were sold around the same time, and they did the Nightlfyers movie. And here's, of course, the woman that was cast in the movie. The fact that she's bisexual is also removed in the movie. But yeah, that's what happened. And so the money, he said that it's not that the story sold very well, and the movie did not do very well, but the money he got was enough that it saved him from financial ruin, and he went on, and the rest is history. But it's fascinating that, like, now I bring that up and people are like, well, geez, like, now the reverse has happened. Like, they did whitewashing, so now, like, we just have to accept blackwashing. And I was like, oh God, just like you can't win. It's got to be white people. It's like heads you win, heads you win, tails you heads I win, tails you lose kind of situation. Like, you can never put a black person in ever, or else you're going to be accused of something. But they can switch black people to white people. You can never switch white people to black people. But it's an interesting story about Nightlfyers and what happened. Eventually, the show was put on Sci-Fi Channel, and they actually finally cast a black woman as Melantha Jurl. Oh man. I have not read Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. But the ending is very similar to The Winds of Winter theory. I have to. Did somebody else bring up this story? It's sounding familiar. A Farcio trilogy, yeah. I think somebody has brought this up. 96. Voyager books. I'll have to read the synopsis of this. But yeah, I always feel people are always asking me what books I've been reading, and then I'm like, I haven't read that. People must think I'm a fucking idiot. I chuckled at this one, Adam Warlock. Society's like a car; it just fixes itself. Who is a better face shitter, George R. R. Martin or Stalin? Well, I mean, I'd rather, if we're talking about, like, Stalin's shit is going to have less like meat in it and stuff. It's probably going to be more like vegetables and beets and stuff. So it's probably going to come out better. When I was young, I used to go to this camp, and we'd play games in the evening, and so sometimes it was like capture the flag and stuff like that, swimming. So they had this one thing called the Rove, where it was about, essentially, you ran around camp trying to get as dirty as possible, and screaming rove, 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 and then you jumped in the lake at the end. It was all a bunch of fun. And so it was very calm. So you'd run out of your cabins, and you put on, like, dirty clothes that you didn't like. You run around and you jump in mud puddles. We're all little kids. We're like 9, 10 years old. Jumping in mud puddles, going rove, 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 like running through sand pits, throwing sand at each other. Rove, rove, rove. And then there's always the infamous time in which, like, we run through the horse pastures. And so horse pasture time comes, and you're just grabbing all of the horse caca and, like, chucking it at each other. Now, it sounds gross, but, like, horse caca is like, horses just eat grass. So horse caca is just kind of like, yeah, it's manure, but at the same time, it's like you pick it up and it just like breaks into grass. Like it's mostly just grass, right? And you're chucking grass at each other. Um, so I just imagine Stalin's shit would be more like horse caca, like all vegetables. You know?
How are you the only person I've ever met who can go into a whole tangent about horse shit? What is
Yeah, yeah. I mean, um, internalized misogyny is Cersei's pathos. That's true. Um, I would say one of the big reasons that Cersei is nuts is the fact that um, she feels she's been slighted as a woman, and she has. And there's a lot of abuse that Cersei takes over the course of the story. It's the funny thing about the story, right? Is that like Cersei um, Cersei is 100% evil and has done evil things, but she's punished for things that she shouldn't be punished for, and she's not punished for the things that she hasn't done, right? Like, so the things that they're punishing her for are for like infidelity and stuff. Like the walk of shame is for infidelity, right? Like not it's not for like murder, you know, like all the bad stuff she's done, like giving people the Qyburn and stuff. Like she's not punished for that. She's punished for infidelity, which of course is ridiculous because like Robert was sleeping with prostitutes right and left, right? Like the huge double standard, right? And you know, she did come out first, and so like Tywin should like worship Cersei instead of worshiping Jaime and want Jaime to be the Lord of Casterly Rock instead of Jaime. But you know, she's never considered, and this like is the major source for her insanity. Um, um, let's, let's see. As a self-proclaimed capitalist and non-conservative, what do you think of Thomas Sowell? Um, the I'm only like vaguely know about him. I've got to look quick right thing here. I don't really know that much, but oh, he claims that he claims that systematic racism is untested, questionable hypothesis. All right. But then again, he was against Trump. Sounds like he's all over. Sounds like he's got some nuanced um, beliefs. I'll have to look into him, but I don't know much. I don't actually know very much about him. Um, he's not he's not like I've read mostly about like the economists that kind of like who have all won the Nobel prizes, which have like kind of shift like the major economic thought. But I'll have to look into them. I admittedly do not know that much. Um, let's see. Now I was told I missed some super chats here. Um, specifically from no. Here we go. Arane maybe an epilogue ruling over Dragonstone. The chapter would be our point of view of Daenerys, the ships arriving, ending with the dragons attacking. Huh. That'd be an interesting idea. The when I think about Dragonstone, I usually think about um the bastard Karen that is there. Not Karen, like like don't be a Karen kind of things, but like um the a bastard Karen is like the ruling the castle right now. And so I think about the fact that like the Karen's castle was given to Philip Foote, and he would clearly like think he's the true heir and would side with whoever would give him back Night Song. And so I often think about him being uh, him like that being the way that Dragonstone would be easily taken. Like, oh, you want Night Song back? Done. Like, bastard of Night Song, you get it. Um, so, but Arane would be interesting just to understand what's going on in his head and his Velaryon backstory. Like what the Velaryon's been doing since the dance has always been a mystery. Like who did they side with during the Blackfire rebellions and things like this. I always wanted to know, but so I would love to know about more about like modern House Velaryon and how it works. And so I think like Arane would be a fantastic inclusion. um, Cersei is trans. She actually does some things in the story that are somewhat reminiscent of that. Um, so at one point, like she wants to feel the power of Robert, and so she literally like rapes uh Tana at night one night, like trying to have power over her and feel like Robert. She and then afterwards she's like, I didn't even like that. I don't know why I did that. But it's there's definitely some weird aspects to it. I mean, George R. R. Martin plays around with like sex and gender, and I don't know if he I don't know how he like really feels about trans issues, because he's very second wave feminist, like and very very feminist, but like his ideas about sex and gender are still very 70s, and so I don't know if he really thought very much about trans too much. Not, I mean, he has trans characters. He has trans characters in the story, so he's obviously thought about it some. My gut reaction is about how George feels about trans is that these are people that need to be protected and who have rights, and I think he'd be pretty open. I've never heard him really talk about it, but I've heard him make some jokes that people got angry about it. But I would guess that he would support trans rights. That would be my guess, but just based on his writings and his other beliefs. Cersei loves her family, except her family. Cersei only loves herself. Period. This is actually the main point. So I've talked about this before, but like Cersei and Jaime are largely based on a story called In the House of the Worm, and you have Jaime is the initial character. Cersei's kind of an afterthought, but Jaime is Annelin. If you read In the House of the Worm, like it's very clear that like it's this golden haired guy who's like really at the beginning of the story, he's really attracted to this woman who looks exactly like him, and he flat up like says like, I probably just like her because she looks like me, and I want to fuck myself. And you're like, oh, like, and so the whole story of Jaime and Cersei is you have these two completely self-absorbed people who are egoists, who like don't believe in any other moral code other than themselves, and the only reason that they like love each other is because they think that the other person is themselves. And so like Cersei wants to fuck Jaime because Jaime looks like her, and Jaime wants to fuck Cersei because Cersei looks like him. Like that's the in thing. Like as creepy as twincest is, like it's actually self-cest. Like Jaime and Cersei is self-cest. It's people fucking themselves. There's this really creepy Conan O'Brien skit I saw once where it was like he had Max Weinberg like take off his shirt, and then like they kind of did this split screen and they show him like seducing himself, and he's in bed with himself, and it's just this really creepy scene of like Max Weinberg having sex with Max Weinberg, and you're like, yeah, I guess there is something creepier than twincest, and that's self-cest. um what are people saying here? Sometimes I'm catching like the end of a conversation stream. I'm like, what are you guys talking about?
The moment you bring up politics, everybody goes crazy.
I know.
Oh, by the way, real quick, I have to apologize to you, kinda,
Yeah.
because for the longest time, I always thought that you had no idea about like these crazy ass leftists. But then when you recommended me to Vosh, and I've been sending you like timestamps
Yeah.
and stuff of some of his combos. If you watch Vosh, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I
Mm.
was wrong. You do know about like these crazy ass like leftists who worship Stalin for
Oh
some
yeah, all the
reason.
tankies, yeah.
Oh my god, I never knew these people existed until I
Mhm.
saw Vosh debating them, and
It's
like,
it's funny because when you and I talk, like you know, obviously like politics is not as simple as a spectrum, but like when you and I talk, like I always imagine, like we always imagine my like me being a little more liberal than you, but you still being liberal. But now that you talk about like the things, like you've talked to me about various stuff with Voss that you agree with, and I'm like, oh, you know, in many ways you're more liberal than me. Like, you know, it doesn't come off that way, but like,
I wouldn't go that far. I agree with Vosh on a lot of the stuff, because when he has on these crazy ass people, they seem him like look more normal than he is. Like he has some
oh yeah,
ideas I don't agree with, but for the most part, you are correct. Like the right is crazy, and
yeah. I mean, yeah, I'd take any of these. I mean, I'd take any of these people. The tankies are like, I don't know what like. Some of them are just like bonkers crazy, like bonkers crazy. But you know, like any of the major streamers, like left wing streamers, like yeah, I'd like, even if they're to the left of me, I would take them over a Republican, a conservative any day, because they're not threatening my rights and the entire system. Like, I mean, it's pretty bonkers that right now, like abortion is getting banned, and because like what goes along with that is the right to privacy. And I think a lot of people on the internet like value things like, you know, internet freedom and internet privacy, but they don't understand like how they're all linked. Like it's difficult for them to conceptualize, or they don't know about the history of Roe v. Wade and how it's based on Griswold versus Connecticut. And like, you ban abortion on the way Alito is talking about banning abortion, and you ban the right to privacy, like, and then everything falls. Like, you know, gay sex, sodomy, birth control.
oh, that's
You know,
next. I would love to touch on this.
okay.
I feel bad for Maurice. I would love to touch on this topic, but like when you're done answering this dude's super chat.
Yeah. If George releases the Winds of Winter, I think we would switch. We would digest the Winds and then switch to doing a fan fiction of a Dream of Spring, because Dream of Spring is he'll definitely die before that. Like, there's still a chance. There's still a chance.
Stop saying that.
There's
If
still
you
an
say
outside
it,
chance he's going to
true.
finish the Winds of Winter, but no fucking way. No fucking way is he finishing a Dream of Spring. Yeah. But yeah, it's really sad about the, you know, the right to privacy, which is yeah, you know, kind of a big thing.
As
So
for the tanky thing, I noticed, because when he'll debate like these people, and there will be, this is something I've noticed. They're young
yeah.
guys in like their late teens, early 20s,
Mhm.
and you know what it is? It's this is gonna sound so fucked up, and I apologize to the audience in advance for the vulgarity, but it's guys in high school who didn't get laid, and they feel as though their problem is not them, it's all these girls. That's why you have a bunch of these YouTube grifters who hate Brie Larson, because Brie Larson probably looks like and represents that one chick in high school that didn't fuck him.
Yeah, true.
And these guys are so dumb because they don't realize that, and once again, sorry in advance, nothing dries vagina faster than the discussion of politics. And all they want to do is sit down and talk about this one time Ben Shapiro owned the libs, and they don't get that that's like not attractive. Like, that's not, homie, shave your beard, wash your ass, and like stop doing that.
Real quick, a tanky is an internet term for like a hardcore communist who's always defending Russia and like always defending Stalin, and like thinks that every politician in America is evil because they're not like a Stalinist like communist. And there's a whole bunch of them right now. It's really weird, and all the tankies are like defending Russia right now, against Ukraine and stuff like that. It's really weird stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of these crazy tankies. Yeah, I do feel, yeah, gay marriage is next, then interracial marriage. I think they'll probably go for a few things at once, like birth control. It's a lot of people that don't, and again, it's like early, that much earlier, the guy that was commenting about how like he just wants to like earn money and pass it down to his family and doesn't want the government to take money from him. And it's like, you're being so short-sighted. Like, there's a lot of these people that are like, oh, I don't understand like how banning abortion would affect me. And it's like, oh my God, like, it's like, because if you're not sexually active, first of all, if you're not sexually active and you don't understand the pill and condoms and like IUDs and all these kind of things that go along that are very connected to abortion and those rights, then you wouldn't understand. You'd just be like a lot of people really conceptualize abortion as this like woman who's 7 months pregnant going, fuck it, I want to get an abortion. I was too lazy for 7 months, and goes in and like, and they somehow like violently rip out this fetus and top it, throw it around the room, like that's how they're really perceiving it, right? Like, they're not thinking about like the morning after pill, like let's like, okay, like as a sexual active person, like in my 20s, lots of women use the morning after pill with me. Okay. Like, that was a thing. Okay. Women also were on the pill. Like, my wife was on an IUD, was on the pill. Those would, before, we decided to have children. These things like affect my life. Many of my female friends have had abortions. Like, the idea that they would all of a sudden have to upend their lives to have a kid, to be forced birth is just like outrageous to me. Like, I have many gay friends who are married, very good friends. And to know that like the right to privacy, like first of all, when I was young, I remember watching Cops. Okay. Do you remember Cops? Is it still on TV? Carmine, have you seen Cops in a while?
No, Cops specifically went off television because one of the camera crew guys died. I remember this being like a whole thing. Fuck. Like during like a robbery at a Burger King or something. But yeah, straight fire from the cop killed the camera crew.
I specifically remember when I was young, like 12 or 13, like watching Cops, and the cops had pulled over a guy who had been, he went to get a trick, and the to get head in a car, was paying some woman to get head in a car, and the cops were arresting him. Right, they're arresting him and her. And I remember the cop said, "Do you know that sodomy is illegal in the state of Texas?" And I remember that like what? What is he talking about? And I remember how to look this up, and they're like, "Oh, well, like sodomy, like by law is any non-vaginal sex." And the fact that this cop like threatened this guy in Texas about getting oral sex, right? And you're like, and now first of all, like the right to privacy, Griswold versus Connecticut, later on, I think it was 98, like struck down nationally sodomy laws. Okay. So the fact that like I remember a time when sodomy was illegal and watched a television program where the police harassed somebody for getting head, you know, and for people to be like, oh, well, you know, it's maybe abortion should be illegal. I was like, oh my God, do you understand like the implications? You're talking about like once you say that life begins at conception, and once which like birth control is gone, like that's how the pill works. Like that's how IUDs work. That's how the morning after pill works. How Plan B works. Like there's conception. So you're talking about like all of those things off the table, which sucks because, you know, those things are great. Okay. Oh my God. Oh my God. If sex were like only condom sex, like Jesus, what a world. Oh my Lord. It would suck. Oh my God. It's like, and plus when you only have condom sex, you're placing reproductive rights and reproductive choice in the hands of men because it's the man putting on the condom. So, but also just the right to privacy. The fact that like you can't have sex how you want. Like, you know, I do not care if you're having oral sex or having sex in the ass, or if you're having sex, if you have same-sex marriage. This is all your right to privacy. And specifically, like Alito's opinion was that the 14th Amendment like does not protect, like mentions nothing about abortion. And the 14th Amendment like also doesn't mention anything about privacy, but it's the interpretation of the 14th Amendment that the 14th Amendment implies privacy, and privacy implies reproductive freedom that leads to the chain of abortion being legal in America. And so you strike down abortion, you strike down privacy, and then everything is gone. It's this really sad fucking time right now. You know, it's a time. But you know, so I'm gonna click this. Preston Bareback Jacobs. The thing is like, yeah, but you just like I say, like you don't understand, like, or I mean, this is like the joke, but like even those jokes, which are like 14-year-old jokes, like you're lacking like it's lacking context of like what it's actually like to be in a sexual relationship, like in a normal sexual relationship. Like we all know this. No one people don't regularly talk about this, but everyone knows like when you're in a serious sexual relationship, like birth control and how you act with your significant other is you know, it's all over the map. It's all over the map. It's very complicated. Everyone knows this. Now, as in a woman can refuse to sex with a man who is not wearing a condom. Sure. And a man can also slip that condom off at any time. You know, you're placing complete, utter control in the hands of the man. Okay. Complete, utter control. You know, and for people who are sexually active, everyone like every man who's been sexually active knows the desire when you're in the middle of sex to be like, oh, I just want to fucking rip that condom off. Okay. Every man knows that desire. Like it's right there. And it's in your hand, the man's hand. Okay. It's not in the woman's hand. You're taking all reproductive choice and taking it away from the woman and putting it to the man with condoms, which aren't even very reliable. Okay. Condoms are not very reliable. But that's the thing. Like, you know, men are horrible. And I know this because I'm a man. Okay. All right. When I talk about these honest thoughts, like when having sex with a condom and being like, oh, I just want to rip that condom off. Like that desire. Like now, how many men in this world are better than me and how many men in this world are worse than me? Probably a lot. Probably a lot on both sides. Okay. but you're placing the reproductive choice of a woman in the hands of the man, 100%. So, yeah.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I can't wait till Glidus or someone else clips that whole I want to rip the condom off.
Sure.
And makes it into a song.
Yeah. I mean, everything gets clipped. But like I say, it's not that simple. It's not that simple. You know, like, oh, women have this choice to say no. No, well, what I mean, why not just have every man get a vasectomy when he's young, and then when we want to have like kids, we can all get the vasectomy reversed. Right? Why not just have that? Like the minute we start talking about like men's reproductive freedoms and forcing stuff on men medically, then people are like, no, oh my God, what? You want to give every man a forced vasectomy? Oh, so you don't like having like people controlling your reproductive freedoms? Oh, you know? But yeah. I don't know what you were talking about. True conception? What the fuck are you talking about? After post two to three? What are you talking about? Conception is when a sperm meets an egg. Like that's what they talk about. You mean like that? I don't know what you're talking about here. True conception. What are these fucking random terms? Truth. Okay, they suck. They suck. Yeah, Jesus.
Oh, by the way, I noticed you got into some trouble when you brought back out the Sweetrobin and Chad and all that. What happened? Like, why were people like so up in arms? What, because you mentioned the race swapping or whatever, Corley?
Yeah, you know, once you criticize these people for like the anti-SJWs are like so like stuck on this like woke is like ruining society kind of stuff. It that you know, there's some of that. I didn't get in any trouble. I like, you know, but people are fucking idiots. It's funny is that like this guy like comes in and like, first of all, he like first calls me a cuck, which like, by the way, like, and then the next thing is like, you're so divisive. People would like you more if you were less divisive. And it's like, dude, you just accused me of allowing people to fuck my wife, and you're saying that like you're the fucking like that I'm the fucking divisive one. Like, are you fucking serious? Anyway, I just wanted to commend Jackie here, and I don't know if I'm like, you know, out of line for broadcasting it, but I just wanted to commend you on your courage in bringing this up, because like these sorts of this sorts of crazy stuff is that people can mess up a condom and not put one on and take things off and be secretive because relationships are fucked, and it takes away the choice from the woman. Like, you're taking reproductive choice away from people. So female condoms exist, yeah, and they suck. First of all, female condoms are horrible. You have to, they take so much time and prep and stuff like that. They're ridiculous. Okay, so don't even like, this is somebody that's like you clearly have never had sex with a female condom, or like know about the system. Okay, like this is just laughable. Okay, the female condom is the most ridiculous fucking thing. Really go out, buy one, have sex with it, and go through the process, and then come back to me. Okay, like I just laugh at it because it's just like, oh my God, have you ever like seen one or used one? Oh my God, they're horrible. Oh my God. Oh, but what a great time to arrive. But we're talking about something that's really important here, okay? We're talking about a major fucking shift. This is like the biggest issue in America since slavery is abortion, okay? It's the biggest issue. And on that comes everything. And actually what's funny is slavery led to abortion. So for anyone that's not an American or Americans that don't know, when the Civil War happened, in the wake of it, we passed 3 amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. The 14th Amendment, in my opinion, is the greatest thing the United States has ever produced, like, as a nation. It is fucking genius. It is the best part of the Constitution. It is when people say, oh, you know, Americans ever do anything fucking, the 14th fucking Amendment. Okay. The 14th Amendment is fucking genius. Okay. And it's the Equal Protection Clause. Okay. If you look at the history of man is people making up excuses to treat other people differently and have different sets of rights. It's like why Greeks and Jews were always rioting in the old Roman Empire and things like this. Like, so when you have the Equal Protection Clause, it's incredible. And it says under the Equal Protection Clause that the government shall not infringe upon life, liberty, and property without due process. And we interpret that line as the government cannot infringe without due process on life and liberty, that there exists a right to privacy. And so once that right to privacy was established, you then start talking about the privacy of your reproductive rights. And so we had many long chain of court cases about, well, women have the right to, choose their schools, and women have the right to choose, who to adopt, and the government can't interfere in these things. And then it got to the pill and legalization of the pill, and that's based on the right to privacy. And then after the pill, then it became abortion, very quickly. And so they're all kind of connected. And so Griswold versus Connecticut is a big deal. It's a big deal. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is once we sort of frame it like this, and first of all, vasectomies are barely invasive surgery. They actually have to get a vasectomy, you have this, like, it's literally like a punch hole thing. You like go in and they just go, and that's it. That's it. It's not even like, I guess it would be technically surgery, but it's like, it's as invasive as getting a piercing. Like it's literally a machine that just goes, like it's insane, right? You could do it like, but it's obviously I'm against forced sterilization of people. But it's a good way to think about the word and think about the world and think about like rights. Like, would you enjoy someone taking away your reproductive rights? I mean, even take it another way. Like, imagine if like condoms were banned and reproductive freedom was only in the hands of women. How would you feel about that? You're with your significant other and you're like, okay, like you're on the pill. She's like, maybe, like you have no choice in the matter. Well, I mean, you can choose not to have sex with the person, but yeah. Intense conversation. This is where we're at. I mean, America's intense right now. They're fucking banning abortion and they're banning the right to privacy. They're going to ban contraceptives. It's already being talked about. It's already being talked about in Mississippi. They're already talking about banning contraceptives in Mississippi. Like, this is already happening. Like, I'm not even like doing slippery slope right now. Okay. Like, Mitch McConnell has already talked about like putting legislation forward for a national abortion ban. And we're talking about like contraceptives. They're already, like, many states are already talking about Plan B getting banned and morning after pill getting banned. But like, they're already talking about banning the pill, the birth control pill in Mississippi. Like, this is already an issue. It's not even like slippery slope. Second Amendment is greater than the 14th Amendment. I don't think so, dude. I mean, your ability to like shoot cans off of, you're talking about like literally, like you're talking about the ability to shoot cans off of your like fucking fence in your back porch, and the ability to fuck. Okay? All right? We're talking about fucking. You really think the guns are better than fucking? I've shot a lot of guns in my life. Not better, okay? You know fucking nothing, okay? Nothing. Because we're talking about fucking. They're talking about taking about away your right to fuck. Okay? So don't even like you're just a fucking, like it's not even a funny joke. Like it's just like you're a fucking idiot. Like, no, shooting guns is better than fucking. No, it's fucking not. Like, what are you fucking thinking? God damn. Like this, you might have the dumbest argument of the night. The night for you guys, day for me. I mean, he's trying to change the subject here, but no, circumcision is a good idea. It's not. It's minor in the grand scheme of things, but it's a good thing. You know. You've shot guns. Yeah, I grew up in Wisconsin. First years of my life, I grew up in Wisconsin. Used to shoot rifles all the time at camp, and yeah, we owned a rifle as well to shoot rabbits that would get in the garden. Yeah, you know, I've shot M4s, I've shot Glocks, Colts, things like that, Remingtons. So, you know, I've shot plenty. Were you not here, dude? Did I not fucking just wearing the 14th Amendment doesn't give me the right to fuck? Did I not just fucking explain like due process and the fucking right to privacy right then and there? Right then and there. The right to privacy is the whole thing, dude. Like the sodomy laws were on the books and enforced when I was a kid. Like, having oral sex was against the law. That's all fucking due process, 14th Amendment. Like, reproductive choice. And of course, birth control has to do with fucking. And abortion has to do with fucking. And so, like, I just fucking explained this. The right to privacy is all about fucking. My God, dude. What is wrong with you? I just explained it. Oh my God. Jesus Christ. Look, I'm not getting on this because I've talked about it plenty, but no, it's not. Okay? Mutilation is doing something that harms somebody. Circumcision has benefits. So it's not that. I'm not getting on it because we have more important things to talk about, and people are trying to derail this. But like, circumcision is fine. It's great. Okay? It's very protective against like HIV spread, HPV spread, getting rid of penis cancer, infections, all sorts of things. This is all proven. You can fucking go to the New England Journal of Medicine and you can read about this. This is all scientifically proven. Okay? Now, is it that significant? It's a little bit of a benefit. Okay, you're talking about, you know, in Africa it's a pretty big benefit. You're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people, like lives like being saved. But like, if you're talking about your choice in a Western society, like decreasing the chances of this and that, you know, you could maybe argue that it's small, but it's like it's certainly not genital mutilation, and that's just a flat out wrong opinion. But again, we're not going to get derailed because it's a minor fucking issue compared to the taking away of like privacy. Like, privacy is going away in America. Like, no privacy. You can't fuck who you want. Okay, you can't fuck who you want, how you want. Jesus, I'm getting derailed. I've actually met people that have had adult circumcision, and they said it wasn't so bad. So I thought like, oh, isn't the scab gonna like break open? And they're just like, no, it was fine. So it wasn't. They didn't mind. But I've met people that have had it as adults. Most people that get it are like people that marry a Jewish woman or something, and the woman wants to have it. But it's not so bad. Let's see. Oh my God. All right. First of all, I'm telling you, if anybody puts genital mutilation again, you're banned. I'm serious. You're banned because it's just incorrect. So go ahead and test me. I'll fucking ban you. Okay? Because it's just not that. Okay.
Have you ever banned anybody before from like the comment section? Have you ever banned anybody before in the comments?
But it's just like, it's stupid. Like I've explained it. I've explained it fucking 50 times. They can go to a goddamn like medical journal and look it up, and they're just gonna sit there and go, yeah, it's mutilation. Like, no, you're done. If you seriously put it, you're banned. Okay, that's it. The fabled freedom in the United States is probably complete bullshit at this point. I do agree with you. I think they're setting up. All right, Carmine, you have the ban thing on? I'm sorry, Smitty.
Oh, not Smitty.
No, I'm sorry. I fucking warned you, dude. You're banned.
Oh no.
Or can we give him a fucking month timeout?
Yeah, you can give him a timeout.
Yeah, give him a month. Sorry, you're done. I fucking went over this a million fucking times. Maybe. It's just, how many times do I have to fucking explain something? You can like, Jesus Christ. Man. All right. So what else are we talking about? Tyrant Preston. My channel, dude. I fucking gave plenty of warning. Took his chances. It's true. Who would win in a fight, Wheelchair Bran or Sweetrobin? Ah, Jesus. That's a big question. I think Wheelchair Bran, because he could skin change Hodor, and come after Sweetrobin. Like, Sweetrobin may have the ability to do some sort of like telekinesis with like bowls of porridge, but that's it. You know, I think Hodor would have it. So, you know. Okay, here we go. Are there hints of Euron becoming a Lovecraftian god? Is any possibility in A Song of Ice and Fire? Any further thoughts on topics since your video? I think what you're talking about, like thematically, is definitely a case for maybe Bran. Like Bran becoming a god and becoming a representation of God. But like, it's you know, I don't know if Euron is ever going to have that chance. Like, obviously, like thematically, there's so much Lovecraftian stuff in in the Euron chapters, and the Aeron chapters, you know. And so I definitely think like he wants to be that god, certainly thematically, and Aeron's fear of him is becoming that, right? And I think like if you switch like to another realm, like there's Bran, who's literally becoming that Lovecraftian god, like ascending, right? So I think there's that aspect of it, but I don't know like how much Euron has the opportunity to. Like, say he is doing, say like best case scenario, he's like creating a hive mind of, like, in the same sense as the warlocks of Karth, and he's creating a new house of the Undying. In that situation, maybe, you know, he's creating like a hive mind of people who have like can use their telepathic powers together. That would be really interesting. I don't know if there's enough time. Like, I think about like the timeline of the of like the books, and there's like 2 years left, like at most. And could he form like his own telepathic like network that's on par with the House of the Undying in that time? Maybe. I mean, it would be interesting. It would make some good writing. I think, God, that would get dark, actually. Like, Aeron, like, gets sucked into this hive-minded... It'd be very similar to George R. R. Martin's story, the Parachute Man. He gets sucked into this malevolent, hive-minded hell. And he's like, his thoughts are merged with Euron, and he doesn't know where his body ends and Euron's begins. And this is the man who like sexually molested and abused him when he was young. It's horrific thought. Could be very George R. R. Martin. But yeah, that's I don't know, gets me thinking. Sure, I'm sorry. We knew Roe vs. Wade was a judicial precedent, was flawed in nature. Why do Democrats leave so much of the door open for an attack on human rights? Why not constitute a law? So there is a flaw to Roe v. Wade, but it's not what a lot of people think. Like, so most legal scholars like understand that the legal precedent of due process and the right to privacy through Griswold and birth control and all of this leading to abortion, like, is pretty sound. The part of Roe v. Wade that's completely illogical is that out of fucking nowhere in the ruling, it says this is all applicable up until the point of viability. And then at the point of viability, it becomes a state issue. And everybody's like, what? Where the fuck does that come from? A point of viability? Like, what the hell is point of viability? Like, it was, if we really want to talk about like legislation from the bench, like, yeah, it's hard to really argue that the inclusion in Roe of a point of viability, it going to the states as a thing. Like, logically speaking, it should be up until birth. Like all Roe v. Wade should apply. So in fact, it's like this like conservative tack on that's illogical. And then people kind of say, well, Roe v. Wade is illogical, so therefore it should be struck down. And of course, like, it shouldn't really matter because there's another ruling called Casey versus Planned Parenthood, which also goes back to the 14th Amendment and talks about, well, if we're talking about life, liberty, and property, doesn't the protection of life include health of the mother? Shouldn't there always be a health of the mother clause? Which can include mental health of the mother. And so you can get to the legalization of abortion through 2 avenues. You can get through it through the right to privacy, but you can also get through it through the right to protection of one's own life. And so that Casey versus Planned Parenthood actually like forced a lot of states that did have like complete bans in late term abortions to have to put in a health of the mother clause. So yeah, it was. I mean, Roe v. Wade isn't perfect, but it's the beginning part, establishing due process, is pretty set. It's just that latter part that's kind of just bonkers out of the way from nowhere. But why did the Democrats leave so much of the door open for such an attack on human rights? Why not constitute a law? It actually has to do with the history of the parties. So when Roe v. Wade passed, it wasn't Democrats and Republicans. There wasn't a Democrat-Republican split when it came to abortion. There were just as many Democrats at the time who were against abortion. And so, the full Southern strategy of shifting the Southern Democrats into Republicans hadn't fully gone through. And so it wasn't really until like the 80s that you had the full religionization of the Republican Party, that the Republicans got, became the anti-abortion party, and the Democrats became the pro-choice party. Like that was a fairly new thing. And so it's about like, could you get the party itself to unify and try to pass a law? Well, it was way too difficult up until the 80s. And then once the 80s hit, there wasn't a chance, right? Like Reagan was president, Bush was president, and then Clinton comes in and he had like 2 years, but he tried to push healthcare at the time. It's like actually passing a national law also just seemed redundant. Like why would we need to pass a national law when like the courts already had it? But should there have been something? Sure, but Republican president with a Republican Congress could just like repeal it at any time. So it's a tough. Would you like to appear on LawTube to argue your assertions regarding the 14th row, Casey, and other parts? I could set you up several major LawTube channels. Sure, though I'm not a lawyer. I feel like I would be way out of my element. I mean, I'm up for chatting with anybody on issues, but I'm certainly not a lawyer, and I feel like I'd go in there and some legal person would fucking murder me. But I'm always talking about this sort of stuff. Yeah, this is an interesting point that there are two pro-life Democratic senators. It's true. In fact, this is an interesting history of the Supreme Court. So the last time there was a thought that Roe v. Wade could be overturned was actually during Bush 1. Bush 1 had just put on his second Supreme Court justice, David Souter, and which meant that all of the Supreme Court justices at the time, save one, was Republican appointee, and the Democrat appointee at that time was pro-life. So they thought they had it in the fucking bag. They were like, oh my God, like all the, like, but it turned out that turns out there was some, Sandra Day O'Connor, for example, was pro-choice, like all, a lot of people putting people on for your party did not become a huge thing until Bush won. Bush 1 kind of ruined the Supreme Court. And he made a mistake with Souter. He thought Souter was conservative, and Souter was actually pretty liberal. And so he screwed up. He really screwed up. And Souter upheld everything, and the Casey precedent came out of it. But it was a big deal. But it was a funny thing to think like, wait, 8 of the 9 Supreme Court justices were Republican appointees, and the one that wasn't was pro-life, and they failed. And it's like, yeah, they failed. I mean, keep in mind Carter got no appointees for his 4 years. Nobody retired under Carter. And so before that, Nixon and Ford were president, and after that, Reagan and Bush were president. So you had this huge period of time of just Republicans. And so when the Democrats started winning again, with Clinton, people started waiting, and so now Democratic presidents happen more often than Republican ones, but a justice was stolen from the Democrats, and so Trump got 3 appointees, 3, when Carter got 0. So it's kind of fucked up. Creating a guy in your head and then getting mad at them. I mean, there are advantages of, and keep in mind, we talk about the logical fallacy of strawmanning, but there are, there are advantages to creating a theoretical person or taking a philosophy to its natural conclusion and examining that philosophy at its end state. So it's not that there's not worth to creating imaginary people or even strawmanning. Like I'm being a hypocrite because I rail on people strawmanning all the time, but there's of course like there's of course a purpose to this, like imagining something in the extreme and being like, well, wait a minute, like, is that really a good idea? Well, let's take that to this logical conclusion. I mean, is this a joke? Like, what are you talking about? Do I believe post-birth abortion is okay? That's stupid. I mean, we like, that's dumb. Like, why would you even ask that? Like, somebody's born, they're awake. What's it's like stupid. It's just, no. Life begins at birth. It's just, that's what I believe. That's it. Legally speaking. Now, having raised a child, you definitely know that like existence and consciousness, like observing it before you, is not a on. Okay. So realistically, like, no, like your existence as a person, like, does not just start at birth. But I think legally speaking, it's convenient and practical to have birth as that moment. I think it's the easiest moment, certainly in other times, like, the Spartans would toss babies into fucking chasms all the time. But like, no, like I'm not advocating for fucking Spartan justice, but yeah. That's it. I'd allow post-birth abortion only if it was Ben Shapiro getting aborted. Yeah. Let me find you, Tony. I'm calling it now. Grand scheme, Euron is a scrub. He blows himself up or gets eaten by a dragon. Already started talking bad about Dany. He's done. That would be interesting if like the true villain is actually Aeron, and like the abuse that Euron gives him creates something worse with Aeron. Because the Forsaken sample chapter is all about Aeron's telepathic gift awakening. Like it's very much an entire chapter accelerating Bran's journey over 4 books, because Bran was only in 4 books. But it's accelerating Bran's journey to 1 fucking chapter, right? Like it's that whole thing, right? It's putting him in darkness. It's giving him werewood paste, shade of the evening. Like it's having him have all of these dreams. It's pushing him to the limit. It's having him try to pray to him, send telepathic messages. So I'm not saying that wouldn't be a kind of interesting idea to have Euron be to just be killed off and be like, what? And have Aeron or Victarion be the big bad, like Victarion with a dragon or Aeron with his telepathic abilities. That's interesting. I mean, I kind of like that, that like Euron's a nobody. And it's actually like Aeron is the fucked up one the entire time. Now we're so much talk about post-birth abortion now. Jesus. What do you think about abortion a day before? I wouldn't have a problem with it. You got to remember when people start talking about late term abortions, these are all health of the mother issues. Okay, this is what people, when people ask these questions, like, and you ask the average Joe, how do you feel about like abortion at like 7 or 8 months? Their gut reaction is like, oh my God, because they're immediately thinking about this developing fetus that kind of looks like a person and stuff like this, and that makes them uncomfortable. But practically speaking, like, no one's doing that. No one's sticking around at 8 or 9 months and being like, huh, fuck, you know? At this point, after I've been feeling like the fetus kick, and I've been like dealing with like morning sickness and like sore calves and feet and vomiting and like destroying my body and having it stretched out, like, oh, now's the time where I just gonna want to be like, fuck it, let's go to the fucking like clinic and get abortion. Like, no one is doing that. No one. Okay. Late term abortions are about health of the mother. So when somebody says like the abortion the day before, I'd be like, well, what's wrong? This is clearly going to kill somebody, right? Like the mother, because clearly the mother like wouldn't want to do that unless her life was in danger. And so that's the issue you need to talk about when you talk about late term. No one's sitting, because no one's doing this. No one's been like, and this is the thing, is this assumption from the beginning that women are just carelessly going around fucking right and left and having abortions. It buys into this idea that like women are a bunch of like careless, cruel sluts. Like that's like your default opinion, that like women are careless, cruel, vicious sluts. They're fucking just going in, fucking and not caring about birth control. Well, actually, let's ban birth control. They're just fucking, which is against the Bible, having, extramarital sex. And then they're just like, fuck it, kill babies, kill them. Like that's their like the default kind of opinion, right? That they're thinking that women are like cruel sluts, right? And that they shouldn't like have control over their ability to choose whether or not they should have reproduce or not, right? That they don't deserve that right because they're lazy, cruel sluts. If you're having an abortion the day before, there's something wrong. Somebody's life is in danger. And so, yeah, no, I'm fine with that. I don't make the assumption that people are being cruel sluts. I think Euron will break Aeron's faith, turning him into his own Melisandre type prophet, going around Westeros, supporting him as a god. Yeah, I can see that. There's a lot of ideas, like so many places to go, like, which is why the Forsaken chapter was so good. But yeah, I think that'd be a cool idea too. That he's just like becomes like the sour Billy character, that somehow he enough trauma makes him into this follower, and he's got to just do the most disgusting, demeaning, pathetic things for this, thinking that he's going to get some sort of like reward in the end for it. That's definitely a possibility too. Very dark, very, very, very dark. Any new point of view characters planned for the fan fiction? I think I'm going to do prologue next, and I think that it should be the Maester at the Crag, personally. But I have to write out the entire like proposition. But like essentially, George R.R. Martin said that it has Jane Westerling in it. So I'm like, well, where's Jane Westerling going to be? She's either going to be at Casterly Rock, or she's going to be at the Crag. I think she'd probably be at the Crag. I think having the Maester at the Crag gives more opportunities, because you could have a Maester that just arrived from the Citadel, and you could have him talk about Citadel politics, because there's a lot of stuff at the Citadel that we want to get into, and I don't know if the Sam chapters by themselves like give enough opportunity. Like, why not have more opportunity? Um, so I think that might be pretty neat. Though I mean, if somebody has a better idea, like I'm open. I'm open minded. Um, the I love the conservatives on social media that get tricked into defending pig or dog embryos. This is very funny. Um, yeah, so very like fuck, it was Charlie Kirk got taken on the show, and he's like he's showing a picture of an embryo, and he's like, "You believe this is a human life?" And he's like, "Absolutely, 100%." And he's like, "Well, this is a dolphin," And he's like, I mean, it was pretty embarrassing for him. um, it does remind me. My father was a doctor, and he when he had med students come through, or in residents, he would sometimes like be quizzing them, and he'd show them an X-ray of something, and he'd be like, "Okay," and he'd put an X-ray on a screen and be like, "Okay, tell me what's going on with this person." And people would be like, well, they seem to have like an enlarged stomach for some reason, and like dwarf kidneys, and I think maybe they have some sort of like cancer. And it'd be like, nope, this is just a dog. It's a healthy dog. Like, like, and it's all part of this process of one of the big rules of being a doctor is that if you hear hoofbeats, don't look for zebras, which and so this idea that like, stop immediately trying to find like weird like sicknesses like that are outside of the box. Like, what's the most logical thing? And that's probably it. Somebody comes in with a sore side, like they probably have an appendicitis, like, or a kidney stone, like don't jump to things that happen on house. Um, have you listened to the 5-4 podcast? It talks about how the Supreme Court is an institution when it came into textual and strict constructionalism. It's by 3 progressive lawyers. It's great. I haven't. I've actually heard about that podcast before. I read a fascinating book called The Nine about the Supreme Court, that really went into some interesting history from kind of the Bush 1 era to the end of the Clinton era, and how interesting and significant that court was. I mean, the new court is probably the most significant, but they're not very interesting. They're just fucking idiots and horrible ideologues. So, but like, the Supreme Court were a bunch of interesting thinkers, who had to think about law and these ideas and how it affected society and stuff like that. And it's disgusting now what we have, which is just people that aren't thinking about the future. They're not thinking about society. Yeah, this is a big thing. Ectopic pregnancies happen all the time. I think what is it like? Is it 5%? Is it? I mean, I have several friends that have had ectopic pregnancies, and the new Oklahoma law banning abortion does not even allow for abortion in the case of an ectopic pregnancy. You're talking about somebody just dying. It's it's 1 in 50 pregnancies, 2%, 1 in 50, but still, I mean, 1 in 50, and the fact that I have like several friends that have had ectopic pregnancies. Of course, one happened to the same person twice, but this is the thing. I'm a single dude. Why wouldn't we want women to fuck around? So I used to live in Jordan, and the Middle East is a very, 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 very sexist place, in the worst ways. Like and it's not even in the sense of like things go back to the religion, because it's not even the religion, because the Christians kind of act the same way. It's just how like how they view TV, how they view media and everything is just very it's very broy, surprisingly. So for instance, even though the Quran says don't have sex outside of marriage, most men in the Middle East believe that they should have a sowing oats period, and that it's totally okay for young men to go around having sex, but it's absolutely not okay for women to be having sex. That's a huge dishonor. The family is like massively dishonored. Their honor killings happen. You know, it's rough. So it's this odd double standard, completely outside of religion, that men are allowed to fuck and men are expected to fuck, but women are not. And this is in Ice and Fire as well, right? You've got these Theon Greyjoys like running around thinking they're men because they can bag women, but like all of the women that have sex are like damaged goods and can never have, you know, good marriages, and our lives are ruined. You know, we have an entire chapter where Theon just fucks the captain's daughter and ruins her life, you know? And so it's funny because like I knew a lot of these guys, and you know, they're like late 20s and they're virgins, and they're very insecure and they're very down on themselves, and they're like, oh man, I'm so pathetic, like I've never even kissed a girl. And it's like the only hope I have in life is that maybe like I'll marry like my ugly cousin who I don't even like, because I can't no one will want to marry me because I can't get a job. There's high unemployment in the Middle East. And people only want to marry people that have jobs, and I don't have a job, so my only hope is to maybe marry my cousin. Like, it's really sad. And they see these movies and they still have these expectations, like they still have this expectation that their self-worth is tied to having sex. Most men know this feeling growing up in a male-dominated society, like that. Oh, if you haven't had sex in a while, you feel pretty pathetic. You feel like you're you know, you're not a real man. You're living up to your human potential. But at the same time, like women aren't supposed to have sex. This double standard. But I've explained to them, like, dude, if you're locking up your sister, and your neighbor is locking up your sister, and his neighbor is locking up your sister, that's the reason none of you are going to have sex. Like, if everybody's locking up their sister, like you're not going to get laid. Like, just like let them out, and you know, that's how it works. That's how it works. Oh man. Um, what are all the point of view characters you're going to do so far in the fanfic? I mean, we're gonna do, you know, all the point of views that have appeared previously, except for the two that are absolutely dead, which is Ned and Ares Oakheart. Probably not Catelyn, and I don't think I don't think John. I don't think I would do John in at least in the Winds of Winter, but or you know, but I think everybody else would get a point of view eventually. But I think I'm pretty focused on Slaver's Bay and Dorne right now, and maybe Jamie and the Riverlands and the Vale. I haven't. I know a lot of people like want to get to the north because the north is the most interesting stuff. But I think it's I think I'm not quite ready to do the north yet. But I think we're getting into this. Septa Eglantine gets a name drop. She gets a name drop in the sample in the Areo Hotah chapter. You guys will get it in a couple days. I think it's great. I think it came out great. You know. Way back in pig embryos get to go to heaven. Do I still think Jon would be left for dead until Dream of Spring? I think that if he were I think for a long time I thought that he would be left for dead and then maybe get a ghost epilogue. If we're talking about rushing the story, maybe he would get resurrected, but I could see him only being from Melisandre's perspective. So like Catelyn, like she's resurrected, but she's no longer a point of view. Which I think, because everybody's like, how is he going to fit this many point of view chapters in? And I think, well, the answer is don't give Jon a point of view. Because we got to start cutting them, right? Sexism in the worst ways. Are there good ways? So some people would argue about like benevolent sexism, right? So there's like benevolent sexism is when like, you pay for a woman's meal or you hold the door for somebody, right? The honor sexism, which is also harmful. I fully admit, though I participated in benevolent sexism through my years. I mean, I always paid for girls on dates and things like this, or asking out the girl, whatever. Oh, hey, Carmine.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I went away. I had to go do something, but simp, woke.
Yeah. So I think there are different ways. There some sexism is worse than other sexism. So like, I think it is harmful, benevolent sexism, but like benevolent sexism is maybe not as bad as other sexism, like paying for dinner and like holding doors is like down the list of like things that are that hurt women. I think they do hurt women in the long run, but it's down the list. Versus like stoning somebody because they fucked, like, or taking away their ability to have reproductive freedom. Like that's like those things. That's rough. Like rough, guys. Take a shot. But yeah. So there's not much of that. Like when I talk about like benevolent sexism, like their idea, like the ideas of benevolent sexism in the Middle East are like, oh, well, women love to take care of children. So my wife stays home all day and takes care of our 9 kids. So it seems like a great system. I get to go to mosque and hang out with my bros all night, and she's taking care of the family, and she likes that. And like, that's kind of their idea of benevolent sexism. So there's not like the same sort of like holding doors, paying for women kind of thing. They like women get less money in inheritance. They get less rights. Like they don't get custody of the child in divorces. Like, all of the little things, like a lot of people say that like, oh, like women's preference in like divorces in America like shows that like there's reverse sexism, and maybe there could be some argument in America with regards to like custody battles, but like in the Middle East you just don't have that. Like men get the child in divorces, like so there's like none of the benevolent sexism of like of America, which but all of the not benevolent sexism of America. Oh man. So we got about 12 minutes. I've been on here for like 2 hours and 48 minutes.
So Preston, you paid for all your dates, right?
Unless they insisted on paying. I mean, it's not like I would like force anything, but I'd be like, it's like most of the time I ask them out, so like I would pay. But like, I also kind of understood that like, well, women have other expenses. Like women's clothing is more expensive. Women's makeup is more expensive. Like, there's a lot of things built into society that harm women. So it's like, I never minded. So I'm just like, well, this makes up for it. Whatever, like, but also I was usually the one asking the woman out on the date. So like I would pay like, but I never minded, but it's like to a Scandinavian, they'd be like, no, that's stupid. You would, why would you pay for someone on a date? Like,
that makes sense. I mean, well, I've never done that. I've been on plenty of dates, never paid.
Wow.
We always went halvesies. Yeah, we always went halvesies. Yeah.
Nice.
want equality? There you go.
Yeah.
Halvesies.
But then,
you open the door for me, baby.
Then again, when I go out, with dinner with other people, I usually offer to pay too. It all depends. But I don't know. You just kind of default to it. But again, I'm an old man. I'm getting to be it's like I'm a boomer. Come from a different age. Like I fully understand that, like, in the long term, the benevolent sexism is harmful. But oh, the problem with free food is men want to order for you. That was the old 1950s kind of thing. The lady will have. The only sexism allowed is paying for calzones. He doesn't even pay for the calzones. Halvesies on the calzones.
I used to do this. This was back when Uber Eats was like in its infancy. I used to do this one trick where you can actually get free food every fucking time. Every time, I forgot how to do it now. They've badged it, but I would get like so much free food. It was ridiculous. Can't do it anymore.
I think the prologue has to be shocking. So I have an idea for the prologue that I think is like perfect and really great and shocking. That's out of left field, that people would read it and be like, fuck. I don't want to give it away, but I've got a really good prologue idea. And it's what's sad is that, like, when I give the outline, I give away like what that ending is. Maybe I'll do the outline and then be like, and then from here on, I'm going to write the ending. So sorry, guys, so, but I've got a really good idea actually on what I do for the ending, for the prologue. So, where people would be like, fuck, like, you've just expanded the story. And I'd be like, yeah, I know. Oh man.
Wait, I thought you were going to do Hodor as the prologue.
Yeah. No, I did receive, I told you I did receive a Hodor prologue, but it was a joke. It got like, he wrote like 8 pages and then you get to the end and it's like, it goes off the rails. And I was like, oh, he's fucking with me. It was an April Fool's. It was an April Fool's joke. But I was like reading it. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is it was what I described about like the pain of like having somebody like inside your mind and controlling you. And then he gets to the end and it starts going off the rails. And I was like, he's fucking with me. Well played. Well played. If men are allowed to have sex and women are allowed to have sex, are not allowed to have sex and men are allowed to have sex between them, then who has sex? Yeah. Well, this is actually in the Middle East. Getting your rocks off sex is considered not that bad. There's a lot of if you're the giver, you're not gay. You're only the gay if you were the receiver kind of ideas. Or like 2 boys going to the woods and jerking each other off is, those are just young boys blowing off steam. So there's a lot of that idea. There's a lot of that attitude in the Middle East. And from what I've been told, actually, like Bible Belt America too. Like I know people in Bible Belt America where it's like, yeah, no, like that was totally like, like a friend of mine that grew up in Kentucky, he was like, no, like dudes did that. And I was like, really? And I was like, like, why couldn't they just like, masturbate? And they're like, I don't know, but they thought it was fine. Like, I was like, okay, but yeah, some weird stuff. Straight guys jerking each other off. Sounds like me and Carmine.
Yo, you need to stop saying that. You need to stop saying that.
Somebody asked me about the Great Recess. No, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Like the Great Reset. The Great Reset, by the way, is this like idea that somehow the heads of financial institutions are going to start investing investing in woke causes or something, and like to try to even the score and redistribute wealth because they're woke. And it's just like, no, they'd never do that. They would never do that. And if they started doing that, everyone would pull their money out of the funds. So, and most money in investment is in index funds anyway, or like that the heads of corporations are going to start like focusing on woke causes. It's ridiculous. Like, people go where the money is. That's how the market works. Like whoever believes the Great Reset like has no fundamental idea how a mutual fund works, or like no fucking clue like how investment works at all. Like, it's once I heard the Great Reset stuff, I'm just like, wow, these people are idiots. Like, it is QN level of idiocy. It is so dumb. It is so dumb. If you want to get laid, you pay to get it. This is actually true. There's a lot of prostitution in the Middle East, a lot of prostitution. And because of niqab, covering the face, prostitutes can be anonymous and not be identified. They can just like be somewhere, get picked up, no identification from police. So there's a lot more prostitution in the Middle East than the United States. Generally speaking, and this goes for the United States in time, prostitution was more profitable and more prevalent the stricter the attitudes about sex. And the reason is because men have always wanted more sex than women. Like, you think about it economically, men have always wanted more sex than women have been willing to give up for free. However, in liberal progressive societies, women give up sex a lot more. Not as much as men would like, but they give up a lot. While in regressive societies, religious societies, women cannot give up any. So you're creating demand. Like, it's a supply and demand thing. Like, in a progressive society, women are giving away sex for free. So why would you pay for it? But in a society where you can't get it for free, you've got to pay. So it's very simple economics. Yeah. You pay because you ask out. It's part of the logic. Like, if I invite anybody for a drink, be like, oh, have a beer with me, I want to pick your brain over something, I'd probably pay. Like, it's just what about same-sex dates? It's a good question. I don't know.
Well, the whole pay because you asked out, that was like the olden days. Nowadays, there are women, I know one, who I'm friends with one of them, who go on dates just to get free meals because they want to just eat and No, there's definitely probably like this is the thing about benevolent sexism. There's definitely people that like to take advantage of benevolent sexism, right? So like in our society, men like to look at pretty girls, right? So they give pretty girls jobs. Men like to be flirted with. So women who flirt rise the ladder. Men like sex. Women who sleep their way to the top can sleep their way to the top. Like, there are plenty of women whose whole game is taking advantage of benevolent sexism. In fact, Ice and Fire is about that. It's about which avenue a woman is taking agency on, right? Like, Brienne cannot do that. She can't flirt with people. She cannot she cannot pull Sansa. She cannot pull Catelyn. She cannot pull Cersei, right? She doesn't have those avenues. She can't take advantage of benevolent sexism. That's an important aspect of the Brienne character, is she has none of the benefits of being a woman and all of the hindrances. And so she's going to, and what that leads to, But like, Sansa is all about, within the rules of the game, exploiting those rules and trying to rise. Cersei, is also about that, but doing it, breaking rules, being really creative. Like, and this is the whole reason why, like they shave Cersei's head at the end and parade her
and everyone's like, oh, she's actually not that hot, because they're taking away her physical beauty so that she can't take advantage of benevolent sexism to gain power. I mean, this is the whole thing. I mean, and that shaving of her head parallels Dany losing her hair in the pyre, and Arya losing her hair, getting her hair cut after her father dies and things like this. Like, this is just, this is what we're see. We're always talking about Ice and Fire, no matter what we do. No matter what we do. Let's see. Well, it's let me ask a couple more, and then I'll finish up here because I've been on. Would someone that believes in the reset want to buy some amazing NFT investments from me? I don't like. Somehow I could see like weird conspiracy minded brains being like into the Great Reset and into NFTs at the same time. Like, I could somehow see that. NFT is just the dumbest like idea like you could ever put your money into. Like, oh my god, if you just want to lose your losing everything. The Great Recess has nothing to do with wokeism. It has to do with corporations removing private property and turning the entire housing market into a renter's market. This is not what I heard about the Great Reset. I heard a Great Reset was about fund managers, and there being only a few fund managers like making big decisions, and the head of corporations like making big decisions with like large swaths of wealth. I've never heard it in terms of like property. I mean, if that is, that's a different. I haven't heard of that Great Reset. I mean, I've heard of this Great Reset about like shifting the wealth of society and how like but I don't know. I mean, there might be it seems like a common enough name that you could have it be a million things, and it's somehow being all connected or something. But it's the people I saw talking about it were just idiots, like. Thank you, Dime Disciple. Women enjoy sex. I'm giving them this. It's true. The yeah, but it's an amazing thing though when we think about like how weird porn is. Like how like porn has nothing to do with like clitoral stimulation. And like I'm just like this whole generation of people is going to be raised with it, like who was raised looking at porn. It's just like not going to understand like how sex works. It's just like, oh my gosh, you really think that angle is gonna is gonna do anything? All right, dude. Yeah, but I'm all for you giving people enjoyment. Sansa can exploit the rules as long as she stays a virgin, probably. Yeah, that's. I think that's one of the rules of the game. It's one of the rules of the game. Though, I mean, she could switch to the Cersei role eventually. Just because a woman is flirtatious doesn't mean they're taking advantage. No. I mean, some people are just friendly. Okay, some people are just friendly, and being friendly is advantageous. And also, women like to flirt with people that they like. Like you're allowed to flirt. Actually, people have accused me of being flirtatious, and it's and that people have accused me of like trying to take advantage of kind of the same thing in my life, and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. But you are right that like there shouldn't be this assumption that like, oh, this person is flirting with me. Maybe there's a chance that I could have sex. But I'm also going to say that women are diverse, and there's some women that are being flirtatious with no intentions and are just being nice, and then there's some women that know exactly what they're doing. Because we've got a spectrum. We got a lot of different women out there. There's some women that know exactly what they're doing. Like all of the women that dye their hair blonde, all of those like attractive women that dye their hair blonde and get jobs at Fox News, do you think they don't know what they're doing? You know, do you think Candace Owens doesn't know what she's doing? You know, um, trying to rise in a certain environment, taking advantage of the fact that she's an attractive female. You know, it's she knows exactly what she's doing.
Debatable. I think Candace Owens is there as their token black person that
Oh,
agrees with them.
that too. Or who's the blonde? The
Megyn Kelly? Or
no, not
fired?
Megyn. She's not so
The
popular
one.
anymore. But the
Oh.
she came out as pro-choice, and then everybody dropped her real quick.
Tommy Lauren.
Tommy Lauren, right? Yeah.
I know her.
She knows she knows exactly what she's doing. You know, that's a perfect example of like, you know, women that are using benevolent sexism to rise, like, and then just don't care about like the rest of sexism. Like her personally, she can benefit and succeed. You know, even though the whole system is screwed. You know. Straight people need a grinder app. It used to be shit, I forgot because I haven't been on apps forever. But what's the Tumblr? Not Tumblr. Twitter? Not Twitter.
Tinder? Look at you. You don't know. You acting like you don't know.
I had Tinder at the very end of my, but it used to be Tinder, and then Tinder went mainstream, and then it's not so much like implied fuck anymore. Right?
There's a lot of bots on there.
Yeah, bots ruin everything. Maybe not the porn you watch, LOL. Yeah, there's so much porn of just like, you know, men just going down on women for 20 minutes and then having missionary sex with covering the woman's body closely in order to get like good stimulation. It's a lot of porn out there. Oh man. So like good sex is bad porn. I'll tell you that. Like that's the thing. Good sex, bad porn. I wish George R. R. Martin was my hippie professor instead of the one I got in Psych, who always praised Carl Jung and discredited occultists by academic accounts. You know what's really funny is So when I posted my woke Chad Summerchild video, I got a bunch of comments about, you know, there was some like I'm the victim conservative that was like oh, the liberals control everything. They've got the universities. And I'm like, what do you mean? like I went to college, you know, liberal university for the most part, but like the number one major at where I went was economics. The number one major in America is business. And almost all colleges like teach neoclassical economics. So this, you know, they have this idea that somehow like every college in America is like forcing gender studies on incoming freshmen. And like, it's just not the case, you know? And so like, you know, I'm trying to think if I had maybe one course that I chose that like dealt with like sex and gender, and it was for like one trimester. We were on a quarter system, one quarter for like my entire college career. You know, nothing else was liberal, like nothing. So I don't yeah. So I do think it's funny, like when people talk about these things, like of course George R. R. Martin, he taught very briefly, he taught journalism. So I don't know how much into his hippie ideas he was going to get. He taught at a Catholic university, being very, very hippie George R. R. Martin, for a couple of years, and he taught journalism. But so I don't know how much he'd be able to get into his hippie ideas on, you know, marriage not being important and the whole system being wrong and stuff like that. All right. Exactly. The liberals control the Supreme Court. My econ department was basically owned by the Koch brothers. Exactly. And econ and business, #1 degrees. Like, it's just, and even if you're like being an English major, which I think is like #2 in America, you're just sitting around reading like classics. Like, no one, it's not that all these people are sitting around like learning that there's no difference between sex and gender constantly. Like, what common core does this fall into? Like physics, like math, biology. Because I wasn't in my bio courses. Anyway, teaching journalism, didn't he completely fail at that? Yeah, well, that's the whole thing, right? Those who can't teach, right? He George R. R. Martin majored in, but for people that don't know, George R. R. Martin majored in journalism in college and then got a master's degree in journalism, and then proceeded to do zero journalism after that. He did not he never ever had a job as a journalist. He never wrote an article for any newspapers. He taught journalism for a couple of years, and that was it. It was very kind of funny. But yeah. It's a good thing he failed.
That's funny. I didn't know that. I didn't know he had a master's in journalism. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think it was just a year's master or something. It was also from Northwestern. He went to Northwestern. And then he, some of it was about avoiding Vietnam though. So I think he finished and then was like, fuck, what can I do to stop going to Vietnam? And I think he did that. And then he was approved for being a conscientious objector and worked as a AmeriCorps volunteer for a couple of years instead of going to Vietnam, because the US government allowed you to be an AmeriCorps volunteer in lieu of going abroad. So, let's see here. At UCF, everyone is a psychology major. There are a lot of psych majors, though. Where does it get do these issues even get into psych? I mean, I was nearly a triple in psych. I took a lot of psych courses, and it's just I don't know how much it really gets into that. Cognitive psychology deals with mostly babies, babies looking at balls rolling and things falling and listening. A lot has to do with language acquisition. I don't know. I imagine you could probably find an elective course, behavioral psychology that dealt with it. I'm sure, but most of the basic psych courses were cognitive. But anyway, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I haven't been in college in a long time, so maybe I'm wrong. Hey, Preston, great work lately. Any word from Hannah in Ukraine? Yeah, she's safe right now. She's currently last time I checked, she is in Ireland, so she's currently safe. But a lot of her family is still in Ukraine, so she worries a bit about them. So it's we don't have time to talk about Ukraine. It's still there. It's still an issue. But yeah, yeah, but she's safe, but her family's still very much at risk. So, and geez, this is dire. Somebody that got a heart transplant from a pig died. Well, that was, I guess, expected.
The pig heart had a virus in it, which I'm surprised they didn't catch initially.
Why don't you stream more often? I try. It's just, it's just, I've also got life. I've also got I can't on Tuesdays and Thursdays because I've got Chinese class, and then the weekend there's kids, and Wednesday and Thursday I've got my own writing or making videos and things like that. So it's just there's only so much. This is pretty much the only time, and so you'd probably get sick of me if I went more than once a week, so so anyway, Carmine, thank you for hanging out today.
You
And
always hit me up on Facebook private, like, "Hey, you calling in?" Because I know I know you need someone to bounce off every now and then.
I know you know I love you, dude. You know I love you.
Sorry, I was like, I'm also kind of cleaning my room and doing all that other stuff in the background, so I always mute myself. Hey, by the way,
um,
can you see if I mute myself?
did you mute yourself when?
You can you see if I mute myself on your
Yes,
end?
yes,
Okay.
yes. I can see it. Yeah, yeah. It says guest has muted themselves. Yeah. Um, one last question before I go. Are you Dutch? Um, are you like pure Dutch? Uh, so I'm about um I mean, I'm Dutch from a couple different branches, but if I added percentages up, I'm probably like um 30% Dutch. Like there's 25, which is like straight Dutch. Which not I'm not talking about my grandfather. I'm talking like my great grandfather. Like they moved to they immigrated here and they lived in Dutch communities for several generations, marrying only Dutch people. And then my grandfather broke out and did not marry a Dutch, but still from other lines, there's people that have Dutch ancestors. So, um, but yeah, I'd say I'm at least a quarter Dutch, and my surname is Dutch. And I spent every summer like going to Holland, Michigan, um, and I've been to Orange City, Iowa, and you know I visited where my ancestors are from in the Netherlands. So it's yeah. But that's me. But it's some interesting things. I mean, sometimes I'll talk about like Dutchness in America because they're also really weird because the Dutch that came to America were religious zealots. Um, but they but it's interesting to think about like I know my family's history and how long it took them to assimilate. How many generations it took them to assimilate. Because now, I would say by the time my father came along, like, he's fully assimilated. But my grandfather, religious guy, went to a Dutch university, lived in Holland, So like, um, Holland, Michigan, like super militia Holland. Yes, yes, yeah. That's the thing is like the Dutch community, the Dutch that came to America were hyper religious, super religious. Um, my great grandfather was a minister. Like these are really religious people. I had ancestors that died from not having vaccinations. Um, that because my ancestors were idiots. Okay, um, and so the Dutch community, they stayed in the Dutch community for many generations, only staying with themselves, and um, the and then there was then there was an assimilation point, But the fact that I think it's funny in America how intolerant we are of people. We're like, these Mexicans, why don't they learn English? And it's like, dude, they've been here like 10 years. Like, give them some time. Or think about, I mean, there's Carmine. Like, he considers himself very assimilated. And you think about, like, that's one generation. Like, he really worked hard and did that. And, but my ancestors, it took them a fucking long time. Fucking long time. But no, not like the Pennsylvania Dutch, the Dutch. I like stroopwafels. I don't know about hagelslag, but I don't know much Dutch. I don't know much Dutch language, but um, people died from getting not vaccinated in 2022. Yeah, I know, but no, the Dutch are not Pennsylvania Dutch. Okay, the Dutch Reformed. Let's be honest, they're a bunch of fucking dickheads. Okay, like I'm gonna be. The Dutch Reformed are the most intolerant asshole dicks. Okay, and they moved to America because Holland was too liberal for them, and they wanted to create their religious utopia in the middle of fucking Iowa, Michigan, and upstate New York. Okay, they were dicks. Okay, and then those are my ancestors. Those are my ancestors. So it's is George R.R. part Jewish? I don't think so. I mean, he might have like one random relative, but nothing like, he wasn't raised that way. He was raised Catholic. But yeah, there's tulip festivals. But the thing is, tulip festivals are in May, and like, you don't want to fucking go to Holland, Michigan in May. There's nothing to do. You can't swim in May. You can only swim like end of June, maybe July. It's just too much. Come on. So. nobody can be Jake without being Jewish. Okay, so here's the thing about Dutch and their surnames. The Dutch didn't have surnames up until Napoleon's time. Okay, Napoleon forced them to have surnames, and so when you really had a Dutch person, you're like, oh, which person are we talking about? Joris van Zyl. Oh, Joris of the Dike. Okay, who's next? Like, oh, Willem. Oh, Willem van Dyke. Oh, Willem. Oh, okay, yeah, okay, okay. This is why their names are like this. Okay, they didn't. So Jacobs just means son of Jacob, son of Jacob. So when they put down names, they're like, "What's your name?" He's like, "Oh, I'm Willem, son of Jacob." Oh, Willem Jacobs. That's it. Like, there's no, I mean, I get it. You're being sarcastic, but there is a lot of talk. Like, people have asked me a lot in my life, a lot. They're like, oh, are you Jewish? It's like, well, I just, there's a lot of German Jacobs. There's a lot of Dutch Jacobs, but, yeah. Yeah, I actually don't know about a lot of the surnames, because obviously, like, a lot of surnames also come later of like, once they're in Germany, like Cohen and such, and you wonder like how, because it has to do with their profession and how long are these surnames passed down. So who knows? But surnames, like, you can, if you're more of like an English heritage, you can take your surname back pretty far, because the English were just more on that. But I don't know. I don't know about the rest of us. The rest of us were not that concerned. In some countries, everybody just has the same surname, like Korea, or with Sikhs in India. They all seem to have the same surname, Gill or Singh. Or what about the quality of fanfic will force George to quit the Winds of Winter? He doesn't know we exist. He don't know we exist. Anyway, guys, I've been on here for a while, but thank you everyone. Thank you, Carmine, and I'll see you guys next time.